Welcome to stage 20 of the Tour de France and the final day in the mountains. Yesterday, Nairo Quintana managed to put a little bit of time into Chris Froome, and a large contingent of Colombian fans believe he can still win. Stage 20 in the heart of the Alps, and at 110.5 kilometres, it's the shortest road stage of this year's race, yet it could prove to be the most decisive. With the first 25 kilometres being downhill, it'll be a fast start. It's then on to the tortuous Col de la Croix de Fer, a 29-kilometre climb, before descending into Bourg-Boisson, and then onto the feared and revered Alpe d'Huez itself. As we head down to the start area, they're not quite ready to go. We're still a few minutes before the neutral zone, and then the flag will be coming in 5 minutes later, where racing will be starting in a frenzy, I would imagine. Number one, Vincenzo Nibali. He said yesterday he didn't see the mechanical problem for Chris Froome. Froome believes he did, and the images indicate that Froome might well be right. Not much conversation here between Froome and Quintana. There's been plenty after the stages. They've shown real class, both of them, in the way they've conducted themselves. That once they're on the bike, it's on. And today, Nairo Quintana has avowed it's all or nothing. He's also said for the Movistar team, they're hoping for Alejandro Valverde to hold on to third place and join Nairo on the podium in Paris. And Vincenzo Nibali, he'll be out fighting for another stage victory as he sits down the back of the race, having a chat to the two Carusos, actually. That is Gianpaolo Caruso from Katusha and Damiano Caruso from BMC. Number 118, Rigoberto Uran. Reports of him changing teams at the end of this season, and the Colombia team are hoping to bring him across to their team. The Colombian team actually first rode the Tour de France in 1983, and the first Colombian to win a stage of the Tour de France was the great Lucho Herrera a year later in 1984, and he won to the top of Alpe d'Huez. Just about ready to go. Christian Prudhomme giving final instructions to the team cars. We're underway for stage 20, kilometre zero, the first to attack. It's Alexander Geniez from FDJ, and he's joined by Tim Wellens of Lotto Soudal. It might take a while, though, for the break to get established. With the downhill start, it provides that little bit of extra motivation. Anticipate that the first 25 kilometres today will be covered in around about 30 minutes. Through the department of the Savoie, in the heart of the Alps, down the Valley Road for now at least. They had a pretty good ride yesterday, FDJ, with Thibaut Pinot finishing in 4th position on the stage, who enjoys the cooler temperatures, Thibaut Pinot. All of his performances throughout this year's Tour de France have indicated that. Strong when it's cold, struggles when it's hot. He was 4th on the stage yesterday. His teammate getting into the break early, in fact creating the break, as Nevadauskas from Canada-Garmin was trying to go across to him. The Australian and the British connection on the side of the road. And now the South African national champion. This is Jacques-Jans van Rensburg going forward. Good climber, Van Rensburg. In fact, early in his career, he was doing a fair bit of climbing with Chris Froome. Nevadauskas and Geniez, the two to take the initiative. They had a nice solo stage victory last year, Nevadauskas. That was on stage 17. Checking across the shoulder, seeing what sort of reaction is coming. Generally a sign that the legs are sore as well. They've got every right to be. They've covered more than 3,000 kilometres in the last 3 weeks of racing. Of course they'd be tired. One man who was clearly tired yesterday, Geraint Thomas, who again provided us with a great quote. Taking from the quote, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. Yesterday Thomas said he was a cheap IKEA nail. Geschke, joined by Pipo Pozzato. And we haven't seen much of Pipo throughout this year's tour. We've seen a bit of his team, but not from the flamboyant Italian. Stage win for Lampre into Gap. That was with the experienced Spaniard, Ruben Platzer. At 35 years of age, has opened up his account at the Tour de France. A new team for him this year, Ruben Platzer, a new lease of life. Through the valley of the Maurienne. We haven't moved too far as the bird flies throughout the last few days, but the driving, the transfers have been horrendous because we've had a number of landslides, which has changed today's course, and it's not so simple as just going over the top of the mountains. You have to drive around quite a bit. Hopefully the transfers have been a lot easier for the riders who need the rest, a lot more than those of us covering the race, and that is stating the obvious. Gorka Izagirre has joined Pizzato and Geschke trying to go across. Izagirre in the dark blue colours of Movistar. Bushman's hanky being used by Nevadauskas as he clears the nostrils. 20 seconds the advantage for these four leaders. Izagirre, Geschke, Pizzato trying to come across and make it 7. Ede, this is Lars Bak. It's been a great tour for Lotto Soudal. 3 stage wins for them, courtesy of Andre Greipel. A 4th tomorrow, perhaps. He'll be the favourite. Normally it would be Mark Cavendish, but I suspect that tomorrow the favourite, the bookie's favourite, will be Andre Greipel. Looks like Thomas de Gendt has come across to close this down. Contador. He said he was cramping throughout yesterday's stage, and in fact his ability to suffer through this year's Tour de France deserves as much merit as his previous successes at the Tour de France when he has won overall. 2007, 2009, Alberto Contador, the winner of the Tour de France. Number 103, Luke Durbridge from Orica Greenedge. He's been pretty quiet, Luke Durbridge. It's been a tough tour. It might have been a big ask to put him in this race after he rode so strongly at the Giro d'Italia. This is Jos van Emden in the colours of Lotto NL Jumbo. All the team buses now making their way from the start area through to the finish line at the top of Alpe d'Huez. Let's hope the gantry is at the right height for the Orica Greenedge bus. I'm sure they're sick of that gag. One of the defining moments it was, wasn't it, of the 2013 Tour de France, when the Orica Greenedge bus got caught underneath the gantry at the end of the opening stage in Corsica. Quickly prompted a couple of Twitter accounts in honour of the Orica Greenedge bus. They got a lot of coverage. They got even more coverage the following few days as Simon Gerrans won stage 3. The team then won the team time trial on stage 4, and Simon Gerrans moved into yellow before the jersey going across to his teammate and his roommate, the South African Daryl Impey. The courageous quartet off the front. Geniez, the man who started it all in white. Lars Bak, Nicola Ede, and Ramūnas Nevadauskas from Cannondale Garmin. Weather conditions, for now at least, just about perfect. It's relatively mild, in the low 20s. And with the complications of, logistic complications of providing the race coverage from Alpe d'Huez, a part of the media compound is separated between Alpe d'Huez and down in Grenoble. Let's now head across to Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett to take you through to the finish.
Thanks very much indeed, Matthew Keenan there, as we're looking again at the beauty of the Alps. I think the riders are fed up with this view right now, because after 4 days consecutive in these high mountains, there is some very tired bike riders down there. And we are intrigued and hoping we see a great race today. I don't see how it can possibly fail.
Well, it's got all the right recipe, Phil. You've got 2 massive climbs, outside categorised climbs, the Col de la Croix de Fer, finished by the fabled Alpe d'Huez, and a short stage too, just 110 kilometres long, around about 70 miles of racing. So it really is a recipe for a great day of racing. And for everybody who is in the top 10 positions in the overall standings, it's a last serious chance to shuffle their positions overall.
So all the team buses are scurrying down the autoroute on the left side of the race. They're heading for Alpe d'Huez in the shortest possible route, while these boys have got quite a long stage, but one of the short ones in the mountains, only 110.5 kilometres. These four riders just want a lead before they hit the first climb of the day, the Col de la Croix de Fer, a climb of 29 kilometres.
Well, there must be lots of questions, Phil, about yesterday. The fact that Chris Froome was seriously isolated a couple of times throughout the stage, and I'm sure that Alejandro Valverde of Movistar will have noted that. So too will Alberto Contador and his Tinkoff Saxo squad. But the big question mark to me, has Vincenzo Nibali recovered from the very difficult first 10 days he had of this year's Tour?
So as we continue, just to show you a little bit of the lovely scenery here around the Alps, the riders now heading on towards Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne. Lars Bak, the man just coming into our picture here, number 72. Nice little valley road, this, usually clogged with traffic, I have to say, at this time of the year. As the riders race along the valley, we've got all the famous climbs of the Alps around us at the moment. Even La Toussuire, where we finished yesterday, is not very far away.
Well, I'm sure many of the riders, Phil, will be quite happy to move away from this valley, because it's not one of the most picturesque valleys in France, because right down in the bottom there's a huge aluminium factory. In fact, there's a museum to the manufacture of aluminium in there, which started way back in the 19th century. But that's where the riders are headed to, over the top of these high craggy peaks.
Yeah, there's a road in there somewhere, and we'll have to find it later as we go over the Croix de Fer, which we've been crisscrossing for the last 3 days. The way they came down yesterday before they actually turned onto the climb to La Toussuire is actually the way we go up today, and we go down the way we came up yesterday.
Funny old Tour de France is here. They had to change the race route because of a landslide and problems with a tunnel over on the other side by the Lac de Chambon, and that's why we're going right back over the Col de la Croix de Fer. From this side it's actually slightly longer. It's a 29-kilometre ascent. It does get very difficult up towards the top, and very open and windy. Although we've now seemed to have got Team Sky to the front, they've calmed everybody down a fraction. But once we start to begin the climb in earnest, once they've gone through Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne and made the left-hand turn away from the valley, that's when I think we'll start to see some tempo coming on in the main field, because that's when they will start that. When they'll start that 29-kilometre climb, that's 18 miles of climbing that they will be facing up to at that point. As you can see down in the bottom there, the river, a little bit dirty at the moment as well. That's the River Arc, and the reason that it's looking quite so dirty and murky is there have been some unbelievably heavy mountain storms going through here over the last couple of days. In fact, 2 days ago we were trying to drive over the Col de Vars to make the shortcut across to Briançon, and the road was actually closed by a mudslide. We had to turn around and come backwards. It's been pretty dramatic down here in the Alps. Fortunately not during the race, mainly during the night and the evenings when those big storms have come through, although there was a huge electric storm last night. But it seems to have cleared the air a fraction, and hopefully the rain will stay away from the Tour for this last beautiful day in the Alpine passes. So Alexander Geniez, Lars Bak, Roman Navadauskas and Nicolas Ede, well, they will be quite happy when they see their gap here creeping up. With almost every pedal stroke, it's starting to creep up to 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
And it really is the calm before the storm, and we hope that's the only storm we get, because last night again, after the race finished, there was a heavy delivery of rain, thunder, lightning. We thought the sky was on fire at one point. It was an amazing sight. But it's all gone away overnight, and it's forecast to be a lovely day for the Tour de France. And Paul, that could so quickly ruin this race if those storms came during the race time.
Well, I think the fortunate thing is, Phil, we've seen over the last 4 days in the mountains the storms have come in the latter part of the afternoon. So fingers crossed. We're finishing a little bit earlier this afternoon as well, close to 4:30 in the afternoon. Joaquim Rodriguez there, number 91. He was the former wearer of the polka dot jersey. He's now sitting in third place. But it's going to be a very difficult competition to win, because I think the winner of the stage today could very well run out the winner of the King of the Mountains competition as well, because the points are doubled. It's an outside categorized climb. There are 50 points available for the first rider to get to the top of Alpe d'Huez in that competition.
We're no more a good move. They're not going to win the Tour de France today, no matter how far ahead they get, because they're too far behind. The peloton is concentrating on the battle in hand. We know that Quintana will attack. His whole ambition is not to win a stage, but to try and win the Tour de France, and he may well attack, Paul, on the Croix de Fer.
I'm not sure that would be the ideal thing to do. Anyway, would it be a good time to remind the riders, Phil, that here they're going through the lowest point of today's course at 534 metres above sea level. From here, it's all uphill.
It's not far up behind the highest point in England, 500 metres, as we're watching the riders here. Cheers all the way. There it is. They're onto the lower slopes for the leaders. 29.1 kilometres to climb. And they've been in this area now for 3 days. They must know these roads pretty well. It's been a good tour to follow in the Alps for the spectator, actually, Paul.
Well, it certainly has. If you had a nice camping car, you could have parked it on the Col de Glandon. You could watch the race go by on 3 separate days, obviously in 3 different ways, but certainly the spectators, I think the Tour de France did an incredible job of actually managing to reroute the race with less than a month to go before it actually came into this region because of the change in the road conditions. And I think it's made this stage a little bit harder than it would have been, because I just have the feeling that the Col de la Croix de Fer is more difficult from this side than the Col de Galibier would have been.
Yeah, it did make me miss the Col de Telegraph and the Col de Galibier, but we're going in a completely different direction now, and that's why we've got this valley road for the moment to move us across the Croix de Fer, and then from there we'll be going to Alpe d'Huez itself.
To pay the hotel bills like everybody else, but I think also Phil, missing out on those 8 or 9 days of competition could give him the little extra kick when it comes down to this last mountain stage.
Well, this is it. We are about to get and see the big signboard that will tell the riders they're 29.1 kilometres from the top of the Col de Croix de Fer, the penultimate major mountain. There it is. So the peloton, Jens, are on the climb. Jens, tell me, what did you feel like when you saw those signs at the bottom of the mountain?
Well, you know, it's the second last climb of the whole Tour de France, so you're happy that tomorrow you're in Paris. But yes, this signs always means pain. Basically just pure pain for you for a long, long time. I must say I'm surprised that the peloton goes fairly easy and relaxed here. I would have expected more stress coming up from the peloton. I believe that's an absolute clear sign that this tour was just super hard. The riders are just really tired and happy that they have a quiet moment where they can relax a little before the fireworks start.
Yeah, the funny thing is, Jens, just looking at Team Sky moving to the front, I think they're using the old adage of setting a false tempo on the front of the main field and maybe trying to put everybody to sleep and making the attacks come later in the day, which advantages Chris Froome.
Well, I guess this tactics works well for about 160 or no, for 150 riders in this peloton. They are happy about the slow speed. There's maybe 10 guys, they are itching to go. They want to go on this climb. And let's see how long they can hold them back.
Interesting today, because it's a short stage of just 69 miles, 110 kilometres, there's no feeding station on the route. And did you notice their Team Sky had a premeditated plan there? They passed food up. Now, what's happened here? Well, I think it's just a squashing to get through the gap.
Yeah, this is where the road just narrowing a fraction, everybody queuing up to get through the corner. And if you're a knife specialist, Phil, of course, I know you know that I love knives. This, of course, Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne is the home of the Opinel knife. And you can see just in the middle of the little silver thing at the top, that is the locking mechanism. It's quite a cheap knife as well. You could probably afford one at about 15 euros for the number 8, which is the most popular one.
Yes, but as big as that, how on earth are you going to carry it around? That's ridiculous. Well, there's no sun on this side of the mountain, as you can see, as we look at La Cime des Torches, up high up in the mountains. We won't get as high as this today, though.
No, we won't. Certainly, as you can start to see the craggy outcroppings, it really is a beautiful day in the Alps looking around here, and this is one of the reasons I think why the Tour de France is such a magical event. It shows us off some of the beautiful places we'd love to visit when we come to France on holiday.
So the riders themselves now, everybody, the 160 riders surviving to Paris tomorrow are all now on the first big climb of the day, the Col de Croix de Fer. And once over the top, they'll only have 56 kilometres to race. Guy just shot off the front of the bunch, taking advantage of the lull here as we fall back to the biggest gap of 8 minutes.
This is a very sensible, Phil, for the moment by Team Sky. They were watching the riders who were going away and making sure they weren't too dangerous, and they're keeping their pace nice and steady. Just a quick glimpse of Tyler Farah, the sprinter on MTN Quebec from the United States. He's slipping away. He's going into survival mode, and all these riders are thinking just how much time they can lose on a day like this. And I've made a quick calculation between 29 and 30 minutes. It's not a lot.
These are tentatives now by riders who can't win the Tour de France in the space that's left, trying to get leads over the men they know will hit them hard later on and try and get just a few gaps before we get up the climb. 8 minutes the gap, and we're only 48 miles from the finish. Ruben Platzer here, pushing on Paul. He's just made his move, but the tempo has been picked up by riders at the back there.
Yeah, but what's also interesting, you've got a rider from Astana getting across the gap, another rider from Tinkoff Saxo trying to get across the gap. They're all trying to lay the foundations for an attack that's going to come later on in the day, because they realize it's so important to have somebody forward. Now, it's Rafael Majka who came across there, number 45.
He's just attacked. He's decided he wants to be in this bait. Now, he could be the advanced Alberto Contador. This is Grifko, by the way, who's come up with Platzer.
And the other day, Vincenzo Nibali said an awful lot of thank yous to Andrei Grifko for the work that he and the rest of the team had done to set up his victory on yesterday's stage. But you can see also getting into that move, Team Movistar. Now, just having... Looks like Romain Sicard again. He was on the move yesterday, former world under-23 road racing champion, and still there is no reaction from Team Sky, and I don't expect there to be any reaction from Team Sky for the moment, because what they will do is they'll wait until they see any sort of a move come from probably only Nairo Quintana. Is the only rider really that Chris Froome needs to really concentrate on. That's big old Arnaud Dumas there, number 24, the big sprinter from France. The sprinter's now trying to find the gradient here, getting just a little bit heavy. The other rider slipping out there was Armindo Fonseca, the French rider with the Portuguese sounding name on the Bretagne Sèche Environnement squad. There's still a very, very long way to go up this climb. We've only done about 4 or 5 kilometers. Once they get to the Grand Tunnel at about 1,300 meters in altitude, then they've got a bit of a plateau for a while, maybe about 3 kilometers, and then they'll start to kick up once they get into Les Chambons, and then it's all up to the massive summit, the height of 2,067 meters over the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. And it's a long descent on the other side. We're looking at around about 20 kilometers downhill into Allemont. Marcel Seeberg is the big German rider at the back, lead-out man for André Greipel. Greipel, Cavendish, all the sprinters today will be in survival mode, just hoping that they can limit their losses on this very, very violent stage. Now, the next acceleration, this is Stefan Kruijswijk. He's the rider from Lotto Jumbo. He's done an awful lot of work throughout this race. They're trying to prepare the end of the race for Robert Hessink, who is having a brilliant Tour de France, a 6th place overall. And they are one of only 2 teams left with a full complement of riders. This is Bob Jungels, the Luxembourg national champion, and still no response. All these guys feeling they've got a chance to move away from Team Sky until the big guns start to accelerate the tempo later on in the climb, because I think we will see a general acceleration as we get to around about 10 kilometers to go to the top of the climb. There's Nicolas Roche just touching his push to talk button on the radio, having a quick conference call with the team car behind. Well, although it's a 7:53, and I think this is a rather important note that Rafael Majka has seen this as an opportunity. He's a rider on the back there in the lime green fluorescent camouflage type jersey of Tinkoff Saxo. This is the little part of the course I was saying about. This is the first little descent after 6 kilometers. They drop down from Les Crêtes. It's about 1 kilometer downhill, and then they will go through the little village in the bottom and then start to tip up one more time. It's pretty interesting to note that Rafael Majka has got himself in there. The other rider who's managed to sneak into the group is Bartosz Łazarski, the Polish rider on Team Bora. It's nice to see a different rider getting into the breakaway for Bora Argon, because Jan Barta, the rider from the Czech Republic, he's been extremely aggressive and looked for breakaways since the very first stage, very first road stage, way back on the road up to Zeeland. Warren Barguil, he also realizes that this is a chance for him to get a bit of redemption, because having ridden so high in the overall standings, he crumbled a little bit yesterday. He's now filled 27 minutes down in the overall, and he's dropped down to 14th place. And again, Sky riding sensibly, not responding to these little early attacks. They know that they must prepare themselves for the attacks to come from the big guns in the last part of today's race.
Well, it's another Welshman at the moment, Geraint's teammate, Luke Rowe, who's been a terrific bike rider on Team Sky in his first Tour de France. Still strong, 3 weeks down the road. Remember, it was 3 weeks ago when we started with the time trial on the first Saturday.
Cyril Gauthier going clear. Now again, there's the same guys we've seen over the last couple of days. These are the guys, Phil, who are coming out of the Tour de France in good form, and they've got fine legs in the last week of racing. We had talked last night in the car travelling down here. There's a lot of riders in this Tour de France who have ridden quite anonymously. We've never even mentioned their names. There are 198 riders started, and many of them have never even seen the front or the breakaway.
Away pretty quickly at the moment as we are gradually in the ascension on the climb, and once over the top there will only be 56 kilometers left to race, most of it downhill till we get into Bourg d'Oisans, and then the last 16 kilometers the climb of Alpe d'Huez. Now these are the riders who started the move. They might be aware they've got some strong riders trying to reach them now. Now, as far as we can ascertain, Contador is tired from his moves yesterday, and the plan is to try and get Majka a stage win, and he's coming up in the next group of 7.
Well, he is a man who's got a real pedigree of being a great climber. Won 2 stages in the Tour de France last year, and you know what, Phil, if he was able to go over the Croix de Fer in first position and go over the top of the Alpe d'Huez in first position, he'd be very close to get himself a repeat win in the King of the Mountains competition.
This is Warren Barguil here. He promised a lot earlier on. We had a few problems. Now he's going to try and do something about it today. And Majka is a strong man, as Paula said. Last year's King of the Mountains as well. Not really in the competition this year.
Well, if he was to win the top of the climb here today and win the stage, Phil, I think with the addition of points, there are 75 points available. If none of the other big names were to get into the top 3, Raphael Majka could go bingo on today's stage as Pierre Rolland makes a move now away from the group.
Pierre Rolland, remember, is riding for Team Europcar. That team ends at the end of the year. The team management said after the Tour, if they haven't got a new sponsor, they're free to negotiate with other teams.
Peter Weening, the rider from Orica Green Edge, a great climber from Holland, still no reaction from Sky. They don't need to react to these, Phil. It's almost a situation as if they're swatting flies with these small attacks. They've just got to concentrate on Quintana, Valverde, Nibali, and possibly Contador. Nobody else is really a threat when you come back to the addition of time.
Kruijswijk as well, another man who's having a great first Tour de France.
Well, I don't know about fashionable. I like their team kit and I like their style of riding. They are a band of brothers. They're doing great. What they're trying to do is they want to secure, like you guys said, they want to secure the point jersey, the mountains jersey, the polka dot jersey for Romain Bardet. And I think they're also concerned about Froome. It is very unlikely that Romain Bardet is going to outclimb Chris Froome on the last climb of today. So they need to try to get some big points on this climb on Col de la Croix Fair, because they get next to no points on the last climb, and Froome will be forced to take big points in the end because he will have to chase Quintana.
Yeah, it's a very good point. The points available today on this climb, by the way, is 25 for the winner, down to 2 points for 10th place. Now, Bardet is only 3 points ahead of Chris Froome, and even if Froome isn't riding for the King of the Mountains, if he were to get the 50 at the finish line today for the win, that would make a big difference. Edvald Boasson Hagen, the champion of Norway, rides for MTN Quebecer. He's tired today, that's for sure, as he just hangs on to the back of the peloton. Continuing, Paul, but great news, the sun is out as the riders climb the Col de la Croix de Fer under the pressure. JC Perrault at the front. We saw him row and skin his left side, and he said, I'm staying in the race because I hope I can recover to help the team, and that's exactly what he's doing now.
We got a self, and they were after, and again Ruben Platz is seeing this as an opportunity, taking a leaf out of the tactical handbook. As soon as we're about to get caught, goes straight back over the top. But you see how attentive Raphael Majka is, and immediately getting across there, Warren Barguil looking for the move here, but I don't think they're going to allow them too much freedom, Phil, once we start to get into the next part of this climb.
Oh, well, that's taken a lot of effort out of riders who thought they might have got clear there and put them back in their place. We've had two riders sprint away off the front again. I think Mike is trying to get away. Kruijswijk has gone once more.
Well, Micah, I think we could be right there in the fact that Tinkoff Saxo were quite happy to try and defend the position of Alberto Contador. Let him ride in 5th place overall. He's no way that he can ride any better. He can't win the Tour de France this year after winning the Giro d'Italia. So give him a chance at trying to win a stage here this afternoon. And as I said, there's a very strong possibility. He's already got 40 points in the King of the Mountains competition so far. So if he's to go over the top of this climb first and he went on to win the Alpe d'Huez stage, he could be cracking on to win the competition as he did last year as the King of the Mountains.
Well, he's on a mission, that's for sure now. You're right, Contador will, I think, finish this race in 5th place overall. And he's always said he never races for places, but the win which he's tried to do. Barguil has come back, he's been picked up, 6:22 now the spread.
Well, I'm not surprised. Just look at the tempo here being dished out by J.C. Perrault. It really is a train d'enfer, as the French like to say, an infernal pace as he's at the front, and he's causing some serious damage at the back end of the main field because of this pace that he's setting. I think he wants to make sure he nullifies all of these breaks.
Trouble at the back here. This is Landanu, who's riding extremely well. Oh, sorry, it's Genius in the breakaway that's done pretty well. That's a shame, but I think they're under pressure anyway, and there's it's only a front wheel, but there is always a problem these days getting those wheels changed.
Yeah, well, the big problem is, Phil, in recent years, because of security and health and safety, they've actually put a special lump up onto the front wheel and the changes, which means that the mechanics have to screw up the quick release before they can lock it into place.
We're looking here at Alexander Geniez. He's just had a front wheel flat tire. He was with the 4 front runners, and he's now going to have to try and get back into the group. It shouldn't be a problem, but the peloton, there's a big reaction. All the pacemaking being done by team AG2R, and most of the riders in between have been swept up. But there's still this little group of 3, but as you can see, they're only just ahead now, Paul. Majka, Anacona and Plaza.
Well, I don't think they're going anywhere, because as we've said over the last couple of days, what you see in the last few days of the Tour de France is different teams are trying to defend their positions, and that changes the tactics and it changes the order of teams who will come to the front and be prepared to do the pacemaking, which is why on this occasion we've seen a lot of work now being done by AG2R La Mondiale. And let's not forget that last year this was a team that finished 2nd overall in the Tour. And that group has certainly been reduced quite dramatically. I would expect all of the sprinters now to be looking for the autobus, or the bus at the back end of the race. It's not a physical bus, it's a virtual bus that the riders try to get together in and ride together as the sprinters and the non-climbers and survive on these days. They know they will have worked out last night, they'll have looked at the average speeds, they'll try and figure out what the weather conditions are like, and from the average speed then calculate the percentage of the time delay. It's different for every different kind of stage, from as little as 5% up to 33% for the team time trial. Now just having a quick look here at Majka. He's becoming a little bit difficult to keep hold of there. You'd almost have to put a noose around his neck and hang on to try and keep him in this group. Ruben Plaza in the pink sleeves there of the Lampre squad. If he looks over his shoulder, he'll see that it's still AG2R doing most of the pacemaking, just that little bit further back, but they've got rid now of Romain Sicard. But there you can see the French AG2R team doing a pretty impressive job. A very, very good climber in his own right. They've put a bit of difficulty onto Ruben Plaza. He's, I think, gasping for breath, but look at this, what a magical backdrop.
Well, this very steady but quite high tempo being created by AG2R now. They've lost one man on Sky because Ian Standard has gone to the back of the race and has been tailed off the peloton. So the cracks are appearing now, and I'm sure the other riders are taking note of this as we continue in the ascendancy here. We're up over 5,000 feet at the moment. Peter Weening there having a job to hold the back wheel.
Well, the tempo really is now starting to get a little bit vicious. It's starting to bite in there, and one of the early attackers yesterday, Dylan van Baal, the Dutch rider on Cannondale Garmin, slipping away. The experience, number 46, Michael Rogers, he looks around the corner thinking, oh, it's going to be a hard day today, especially if Alberto Contador needs some assistance down towards the end of the race. And bear in mind, Phil, we haven't really yet got into halfway up this climb. There's still an awful lot of climbing to go. We're actually, as we go through the tunneled part here, we're about to reach a slight plateau for a couple of kilometers before it really starts to kick up once more.
There are 3 tunnels actually we climb through as we climb up the mountain today. We've gone back up to the leaders. Genier had the flat front wheel. He's back with the group now. They're pushing on. The gap was 7:50 at the base. It's down to 5:33. And we've got Maika, Anacona and Plata. And this is Plata putting in an offensive.
Well, this is the rider, and it's so strange when you get these climbs that the difference in gradients suits different riders. And Ruben Plata was having a spot of bother before, and he all of a sudden has found a new second breath, if you like. But if you just caught a quick glimpse there, AG2R have done a fine job of work, and they've slowly dragged themselves up. And I think those 3 riders very shortly, next time we get a quick look at them, will be back in contact.
If they keep lifting the pace like this, Plata being the 16th stage winner down in gap of this tour, Sylvain Chavanel is the rider here, 183, and that gap has suddenly opened because of the acceleration of the peloton.
Well, Martin Elmiger, the rider just in front of him, a former winner of the Santos Tour Down Under in Australia, and Sylvain Chavanel, a rider who during the transfer season will be seriously looking for a new contract, because his contract, along with Jérôme Pinot, the rider who's been with him as his mate on many of his teams for a long time, has announced his retirement. Chavanel still looking for a contract for next season.
12 points.
Prize, Phil, because Stannard has just done so much work on the flat stages of this race, sometimes doing as much as 50 or 60 kilometers of pacemaking on the front. Now we're getting to the point where a lot of these guys are really starting to hurt and pay for the energy that they've dispensed in the early part of this year's race. And for Stannard, well, he's just hoping he can get over the top of this climb and get himself up to the top of the Alpe d'Huez inside of the elimination time. And he's handed responsibility up to the climbers, the lighter built riders on Team Sky, to look after Froome in these last few kilometers. 66 kilometers now left to go.
Bardet is the man that they're doing all this work for at the front. Bardet would love to get some points. They really could do with everybody back, and 5 minutes with the 4 riders, they're catchable before the top of this climb. They really are. By Joe, how on earth did they build that bridge?
With great difficulty, I would expect. Now, the French, I have to say, Phil, we've seen some magnificent bridges throughout the whole of this 3-week tour around France, and the viaduct of Millau that we saw earlier on, which is almost higher than the Eiffel Tower, must have been one of the iconic bridges that we've seen so far this year. And that little bridge we saw just a few moments ago, I think it was the viaduct of Sallanches, and if you know Sallanches, that's where a certain Bernard Hinault was crowned a champion of the world.
Well, as we are seeing at 5:17, we are hearing reports from the side of Alpe d'Huez that the spectators there, known as Dutch Corner, they've just seen the Sky Team vehicles going through, and they've been rather aggressive against the vehicles, trying to get inside the vehicles. Well, as far as we know, they got through safely, but you know, this really...
The scary thing is, Phil, that when you look at soccer, you look at rugby, you look at any other sport, so the athletes are completely protected because they're in stands, they're in tribunes, and here the stadium is the open roads, the open fields. There is no protection between the spectators and the riders, and hopefully most of the spectators do come to the Tour de France with respect for what these guys are going through. Especially look at this guy here, Jean-Christophe Perrault. When you think about the accident that he had, when you think about what he's done to stay in the Tour de France, they shouldn't really be insulted and attacked like that.
Yes, and the same applies with the spitting. Doing the spitting has been flashed around on the social media, and none other than Fabian Cancellara, who crashed out of this race while wearing the yellow jersey, said, "Who is this guy?" And I think he wants to know his full name and address. These are the leaders.
I wouldn't be surprised if Fabian Cancellara goes round and has a quick word with him either, because Fabian, I think, rather disgusted by that incident yesterday. There was a couple of incidences against 1 or 2 riders, which I found rather disgusting myself, I'd have to say. And if you have a quick look around social media, you can see who these people are, maybe circulate it and try and track them down.
5 minutes 11 seconds, 65 kilometers only to go. Remember, short stage today of 110. The sprinters will be afraid if this peloton keeps pushing on that they will be eliminated from the Tour. That has always been in the back of their minds on a short stage. They've got to get in within about, we don't know the actual figure till the leader crosses the line, about 27 minutes, 28 minutes. But until we know the average speed for the day, we don't know the elimination time for the riders. High humidity today. It's still pretty cool at 18 degrees Celsius, but it's a beautiful day for riding the high mountains of the Tour de France on this occasion for the last time. 5 minutes, 5 seconds. So those four leaders, and thanks solely to the pacemaking, Jean-Christophe Perrault, the runner-up in the Tour de France and who has been injured here in this race, he's brought that gap down virtually single-handed by over 2 minutes. Look at his face. This guy is just riding for one man now, the polka dot jersey wearer of Romain Bardet. It would be a great result if he could get Bardet home in polka dot tonight.
Geniez has felt the fact that the average speed is dropping down a fraction, and he's taken off on his own.
Well, Warren Barguil, just the two riders down there low, trying to just hold that peloton. Hope they slow a little bit, but it's all due to the incessant pacemaking of Team AG. And this looks to me as though Geniez has decided more speed required in this breakaway. He's gone forward by himself. Only 60 kilometers left to go. He knows a lot of riders when you've got 4 minutes lead over the peloton. Geniez might have a little bit of an ambition here today.
Well, he's 27 years of age. He's only got one victory to his credit this year, and that was the Trofeo Bro-Léon, which is a race in Brittany. It's a rather steep little race. But, you know, he did finish 9th overall in the Giro d'Italia, so it indicates that he's a man who will not have too much fear of the big high mountains of today.
And it's only his second Tour de France. He wasn't here last year. In 2013, he finished in 44th position. This guy's a pretty solid bike rider.
Well, I'd almost forgotten, Phil. It seems like months ago, but he actually was in the same race. He raced into the town where he was born, and that was way back in Rodez. Seems like a year ago now.
It does, actually, when we saw his name all over this. And he made a big effort to try and finish it off for the folks back home. It didn't work out. But he's no stranger to climbs. At the moment, he's pushed the odds up just about the same speed between the two now.
Well, also, Phil, he won a very difficult stage in the Vuelta a España back in 2013, and that was to Peyragudes. It's a really nasty little climb in the Pyrenees, and we've used it a couple of times in the Tour de France as well. So they'll probably know that. Barguil, number 82, woof, he can breathe a sigh of relief as he recovers now. And again, there's those nasty little speed bumps that the French seem to have invented over the last 12 months. And nearly every little town that you go through now has those speed bumps to slow down the traffic, but it makes it a bit difficult riding a bike into town. Geniez, been a professional since 2010. He originally turned professional for the Skill Shimano squad and stayed with them for 3 years before moving across to FDJ. Barguil, again, he's just 23 years of age. This kid sitting on the back here, he's a two-time stage winner in the Vuelta a España too. He's trying to discover the Tour de France this year as just a little bit further forward in front of him. He's got his teammate trying to pace him. That's Simon Geschke. 5 kilometers now to go to the summit. The gap is starting to appear between Geniez and the other riders who are with him. What he'll have to hope now, and as you can see, lots of damage happening at the back end of the main field. One by one, riders starting to pop. Just having a quick look there. Well, that's JC, and no surprise really. Jean-Christophe Perrault has done his job for the day. He's done a lot of pacemaking, and now he's paying for the effort.
At this point, you ride steady and you can't panic. Hope the top comes soon. We top out at just over 56 to go. We're 58.3 at the moment as Lars Backe just tries to ride away. It's 3:31, and here comes the attack. This is the first one from Movistar, and they've gone on the climb of the Col de la Coiffeur. They have time to gain time. This is Valverde making his move.
Well, he's not just defending his position in third place at the start of the day. This man is going for the long one. If he wants to do something, if he wants to turn the tables on this race this afternoon, he knows he has to go from a long way out. This is a really courageous move by this man. Very often towards the end of the Tour de France, riders are trying to defend their little position in second or third or 7th overall, but Alejandro Valverde is putting all of his cards on the table right now. And let's not forget, Phil, he's a good descender. If he can go over the top of this climb with a 1 minute advantage, he's got 20 kilometers or 12 miles downhill to recover over the top of this climb.
He starts his attack with a deficit on Chris Froome of 5 minutes and 25 seconds. Now, the word was that it would be the rider in white who would attack Froome today, Quintana, on this climb. Now it's Valverde, his teammate, who has gone. They've got the chance of the old 1-2 here, and they've seen that Chris Froome has been stripped of his team now as they come towards the top of the climb of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Navadauskas in trouble now.
Well, he went on the early move. He wanted to try his hand and getting a slight advantage before the start of the climb, but this is a climb that shows no friends at all. I just spotted Andrew Talansky there on the wheel of Geraint Thomas. Thomas had a very difficult last 48 hours. The guy in the black jersey there, Phil, he was 4th overall at the start of the stage yesterday, and bang, he lost all of his chances. It is Nicholas Roach over to the right-hand side.
It's Roach and Porter got allowed now. They're going to have to try and do something about this. Roach doesn't look too relaxed, but he's got to try and contain that move by Valverde.
Well, that's what he wants to do. He's had a difficult day himself. It's quite funny how one day they've lost a rider, the next day he's managed to bounce back to help. And Nicholas Roach today is going to have to do something very, very special to defend the position of Chris Froome. 25 seconds, and in modern cycling, that is almost impossible.
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's very, very unlikely. And but he's attacked early, and as he attacks at this stage. Now, Jens Voigt, what do you think of this move by Valverde, and in particular for Movistar?
Well, I believe it's a very, very good move. And to me, the biggest thing about this move is that Valverde is ready to sacrifice everything. Valverde is going to be the king of the day, taking yellow and the stage win, or he's going to maybe lose everything and finish 25th today. And he's ready and willing to put it all on the line for his teammate, for Quintana, to give Quintana the best possible chance of attacking Froome later if this attack doesn't go through. So just on a human point of view, it's a great move by him. It's a really champion move to go, okay, I go all in, I lose it all, or I win it all today.
Well, we're going to find out now, because he's making progress here in his 8th tour.
But I think that's the kind of rider Alejandro Valverde is. He's done so much in the sport, and now he can take that risk. It's a do-or-die effort this afternoon. Team Sky reduced to 2 men, Richie Porte and Nicholas Roach. But again, Phil, they mustn't panic at a time like this. You know, Nick Roach is a solid rider. You have to remember that Nicholas Roach has finished in the top 20 in the Tour de France on a couple of occasions. As we look at this group, tailing off the back, Thibaut Pinot, Andrew Talansky, Matthias Frank. There's some serious men losing contact here. And it looks like the bobbing style of Dan Martin there as well in the lime green for Cannondale Garmin. Now, this is a man who we've not talked about very much. This is Jose Serpa, the Colombian rider, who, strangely enough, as a Colombian rider, is not reputedly a great climber. He's been a great track man on the velodrome in the past.
First time we've mentioned his name in 3 weeks of cycling, but he is a very good climber, and looks like he's decided to flex his muscles today. There's the long barren road now as we come up towards the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Now, the first 2 years that Valverde rode the Tour de France, he wore the white jersey of a best young rider, but didn't finish the Tour. Last year, he finished in 4th place. Currently, he's 3rd. And now we'll see what he can do. But this is the man who is setting fur at the moment. Alexander Genier from Rodez, down in the Ardèche, now coming up not far from the summit.
Well, you might remember me earlier talking about the stage to Périgueux. That, in fact, Genier's won in the Vuelta a España. But if you go back to 2012 in the Tour de France, the stage up to Périgueux, which is right outside of the town of, I've forgotten the name of the town, down in the valley where, I've lost it now, the thermal town.
Well.
The thermal town near Super-Bagnères, where Valverde jumped away and put Bradley Wiggins into difficulty.
Well, Luchon.
That's it, very good.
The town of Luchon-Bagnères. Okay.
Well, that's where he jumped away on that stage, won the stage, and it was the stage that nearly was the undoing of Bradley Wiggins, if you remember.
Well, that's a very small group now. Roach has got to the front. They know that Valverde has gone. They're not panicking at the moment. We haven't got a time check just now on the approach of Valverde, but it looks as though he's got 30 seconds on this group at the moment. And then
keeping a close eye on Chris Froome.
Well, yesterday Valverde cracked and he dropped back to 5 minutes and 25 seconds. At this minute in time, he's not a major concern for Chris Froome. But you know, this could be a little bit of a dummy to try and set up a springboard for the white jersey, his teammate Quintana, to really hit at Chris Froome.
Well, this is the big advantage that Movistar have always said that they had throughout the whole of this Tour de France. They had this two-pronged attack that they could use coming into the mountain stages. Valverde sadly lost a little bit too much time, because if he was at about 3 minutes, there would be a lot more pressure on Team Sky to be forced to chase him down. Quintana's gone.
That is gone. That's the 1-2 we expected.
Well, this is the move, and I did not expect it to come on this climb, but Nairo Quintana knew that if he wants to win the Tour de France, he needed big time. He needs 2 minutes and 38 seconds on Chris Froome, and he has gone a long way from the finish. And the advantage he's got is ahead of him on the road. He has got Alejandro Valverde. Now, if he joins forces, and I'm sure he'll ride across the gap very quickly to Alejandro Valverde, and once he joins Valverde, they've got two Movistar riders together, and they will collaborate. And the advantage is that on the descent, Valverde will make a really fast descent for Nairo Quintana, drag him along the valley road, and take him to the next part. Now, this is interesting, because here's a Colombian rider, Jose Serpa, who all of a sudden I think is remembering that he's a compatriot of Nairo Quintana. Quintana not showing any emotion. Bang, there's another Sky rider who's just popped away there, and that looks like Richie Porte. The gears are not going round as smoothly as he would have liked to. So the attacks are coming now. Slipping away there, number 34 is Wouter Poels. Again, it's in fact Richie Porte is not the rider who went away, it was Wouter Poels, and Richie Porte has found something this afternoon. He knows he's going to have to really dig in deep, even though he's leaving Team Sky at the end of this year to go somewhere else. We believe it to be at BMC, but it's not been officially announced. He is still a very good friend of Chris Froome's. They're good mates, definitely. Geraint Thomas, he just can't get the engine room firing now. He looks across at Dan Martin. He's going backwards, 4th overall at the start of the day yesterday. It is going to be a dramatic stage. The next rider to disappear is Nicolas Roche. That means there's not many men left to look after Chris Froome.
Well, we're watching now. This was a planned attack by Valverde to be followed by Quintana, and so far Movistar is saying it's gone perfectly according to plan.
Well, Nicolas Roche has now popped off the back of that group. There's only one man left from Sky. It's the man who's been on and off many times. Now the join here, this is the tactical move. It's perfection if they can make it work. Now I think it's a good move at Quintana, because he's joined Valverde. Valverde, if they stay together over the top of this climb, will eat his heart out, ride his heart out on the descent, because it's still a long way to go to the Alpe d'Huez.
It's also a long way to go to Bourg d'Oisans downhill, and it is actually Valverde who is the champion descender. He's gone up here to try and guide the young man in white down the mountain, not necessarily up the mountain. And this is an in-battle, and now it's up to Chris Froome to counter it. He's still got time on his side, remember, but if Quintana had not made a move here, he had no chance of winning the Tour de France.
If he wants to win the Tour de France, Phil, he knows he's got to make big time. He probably looked back at the results from the last time they came to Alpe d'Huez, and he was up against Chris Froome. He put 1 minute and 6 seconds into Chris Froome on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. He needs in excess of 2.5 minutes to win the Tour de France this year, which is why he had to attack from so far out. But the fact that he's got his own teammate with him, Alejandro Valverde, that's trump cards on the table for the moment.
Well, this has put Romain Bardet's ambitions on ice.
The next little town, Alemont, and then it's a longer road up towards Bourg d'Oisans. It's a straight road as well. It's unterminable for this young man, because it will. It's slightly uphill though once he gets onto the main road, climbing into the base station of Alpe d'Huez, Bourg d'Oisans, and then he'll see the sign 13.5 kilometers to the summit.
It's a great move by Genier, and so far he's not looked to have made any mistakes. He's going to go to the bottom of the Alpe, possibly with 4.5 minutes, and that's a good lead for the last 16 kilometers to the top of the climb. And what a result it would be for him. He's certainly doing his French reputation the world of good today on what is seen as one of the hardest days in the Tour de France, because of the speed and the shortness of the day.
Well, the dam wall of the Lac de Vernay just hovers above the small town of Alemont. These riders swinging away. And this chase group now looking at 25 kilometers to go as well. So, having a quick look at this group, Pinot is in this group, Anacona, Roland, Plaza, Jose Serpa, the Colombian rider on Team Lampre, Heyerdahl and Navadauskas. What a magnificent shot that is as they move away this gravity dam wall as they drop down into Alemont. The gap is 1 minute and 42 seconds between Geniez, 3 minutes back to the chasers, and then 4:05 it is saying back to the yellow jersey group, which has got now, after the recovery, most of the riders in the top positions in the overall standings. Although Nibali
.5 kilometres in the distance is the town, in the far distance, the town of Bourg d'Oisans. We'll turn left, we'll head up Alpe d'Huez. It's a fable climb, Paul. Over the years, it's been climbed now 29 times when we get on it today. And it's a fable climb. It's where the Colombians came of age. I remember back in 1984, Lucho Herrera. Boy, he went home a hero, didn't he?
Well, Phil, you remember, I was in the race. I remember Lucho Herrera was in the breakaway. It was the first year there were amateur riders, the first time they'd allowed amateur riders into the Tour de France. And Lucho Herrera was racing up against Bernard Hinault.
Yeah.
He was racing up against Laurent Fignon. And he went to the top of the Alpe d'Huez. And strangely enough, that night, I stayed in the hotel with Lucho Herrera as he crossed the line, and it was crazy pandemonium. There were trumpets and horns, everything going all night. I got no sleep.
Neither did I. 49 seconds he beat Laurent Fignon, who went on to win the Tour de France, by the way. Interesting too, Fignon beat Bernard Hinault that year by over 10 minutes.
First Colombian winner of a stage in the Tour de France. And if my memory serves me correctly, Phil, there were 3 Colombian riders in the top 10, and Bernard Hinault was not happy to get beaten by what he regarded as a bunch of amateurs. But I'll tell you one thing, Phil, they were amazing the way they went uphill. I was there and I had first-hand experience.
Great climbers, born and bred climbers. But this is the man today who's setting the televisions alive around France at least, Alexander Geniez, trying to take advantage of the in-battle for the final podium in Paris tomorrow by stealing the stage up Alpe d'Huez.
2 men caught in no man's land. Nicolas Hédé in the front in the red jersey from Cofidis, and with him Lars Bak of Team Lotto Soudal. Oh, calm down, calm. Just take it easy. We've still got a long way to go. Yes, they have, and they know what's on the horizon. In fact, we're getting the time check that there is a big gap, but I think the reason that Lars Bak was saying just slow down a bit was because he realizes that they're about to get caught by this group of chasers. Well, there they are. There's the yellow car just behind them. And I think that's why Lars Bak said, just hold on, let's not use all of our energy along the mountain road, because otherwise we'll blow to pieces on the...
Strong riders from Garmin, from Cannondale Garmin in here, so they got a fair chance of making it, right? The highest is a brilliant climber, so I guess maybe I put some money on him for today.
Well, that's an interesting one, and he's the rider here, the tallest of the two, and well, we'll see when they make the move here. That was Jose Serpas, just swung off the front. They've also got the 2 top French climbers, Thibaut Pinot in here, and Pierre Rolland. They're now under the sprint banner. Nobody interested in the green jersey sprint, but they want to get to the mountain.
Well, that's Serpa there, Phil, in second position. I remember him winning the Tour de Langkawi, a brilliant race in Malaysia, but I wonder, we always used to compare the Genting Highlands finish to the Alpe d'Huez. It was the Malaysian Alpe d'Huez, if you like, and he's lining himself up now for the real Alpe d'Huez.
That was a very, very hard climb and very steep towards the end, and Serpa is a good climber. Well, the riders, we're now seeing the Chris Froome group. It's strengthened to around 30-35 riders here. They're on the outskirts of Bourg d'Oisans, and once we get through Bourg, they will make a left turn and they're onto the climb. And we're not far away from starting that climb now with the leader, Alexander Geniez.
Just chatting alongside him there, Yvon Madio, the younger brother of Marc Madio, himself a very good professional.
Here we are. We're starting the climb now, 13.8 kilometres to the summit. It starts immediately with its lacets, its corners, as it hairpins its way to the summit. On every corner, it tells you the altitude they reach, and each corner named after a famous rider from the Tour de France.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, I can still remember as you make that turn onto the Alpe d'Huez, it looks like a wall straight in front of you. It's dark tarmac, and then you know you're in for 38, to 42 minutes of pain if you're going to be one of the top riders. Some of the guys at the back, it'll take them 50 to 55 minutes to get up this beast.
So here now we can see Ride Up Movistar starting to do some tempo in the peloton. So that's an indication to me that they still having a plan with Quintana, and they not only want to try to take the yellow jersey, but they want to win the stage as well with Quintana today. That's why they're trying to reduce the time gap to the leading riders.
Well, Phil, just looking at the yellow jersey group come through here, that means now that all the points in the Skoda sprint competition have gone away for today. There's only 70 points left on tomorrow's stage, so as long as Peter Sagan gets himself onto the Champs-Élysées, he's won that competition for the 4th year in a row.
We won't be seeing too much of Peter today. We perhaps will tomorrow when the sprinters should cross swords on that last stage in Paris. This, though, will decide the Tour de France today. The time gains at the top of this mountain, just 9 miles away, will be the time gains and losses tomorrow in Paris.
Well, his gap over this chasing group now is down to 1 minute and 35 seconds. Navadauskas on the left, 168. He said, right, it's up to you now, rider. You defend the flag for Canada and, of course, for the United States with Cannondale Garmin. That was Navadauskas going back, his job done for the day. And, you know, when you stop working on a slope like this, it's almost as if you stop. And also, you can see Lars Bak, number 72. He's going through the same thing.
15 kilometres banner for the peloton of Chris Froome. He knows he's going to be hit any second once we turn onto the climb itself. There's the result of the sprint for what it's worth. It was a non-sprint. Genier Navadauskas with the order over the line. None of these riders interested in the green jersey competition. Now Team Sky are going to guide Chris Froome onto the slopes of Alpe d'Huez, and then I suspect it's all down to Froome.
Well, he's going to have to take the bull by the horns and really ride for himself. Or once he loses his teammates, and they will stay with him, Phil, for as long as possible. But once he loses his teammates, the responsibility is his own as the yellow jersey. Good to see Lamprey doing this pacemaking. Ryder Hezerdahl is the rider in second position in that lime green jersey of Cannondale Garmin. While this is the yellow jersey group, and it has swelled quite a bit in numbers. But you watch out when they hit that first slope, when it kicks up to 10.5% of the first kilometre, you'll see all of these guys gasping for breath, and one or two of them might be putting out the parachutes.
Serpa on the front of this second group on the road. Hezerdahl, the Canadian rider, the only Canadian to win the Tour of Italy, and always gets better on the last week of a 3-week race. He's sat there in second place. Pierre Rolland, Thibaut Pinot, their climbers. Winner Anacona. He's just about hanging on now as Serpa starts to wind it up. There's been a bike change. Nibali has a flat tyre, and this is as he approached. Couldn't be a worse possible time for last year's winner.
See how calm he was then, though, Phil. You've got to be serious at a moment like this. He took the bottles off his machine and changed them across to the new machine because he realises it's important to keep topped up with fluids. Cast your mind back at the last time this racer came up to the Alpe d'Huez. Chris Froome went through a very difficult period. He had a hunger flat. He was running out of energy, and he had to get an energy bar from the team car, which was picked up by Richie Porte, and now it's a move by Movistar.
Well, and Chris Froome didn't attack when he saw this man in trouble, if indeed he knew. Well, he's going to get back, I think, but he's going to have to sprint it close because the move has started now. This is the pressure going on. It's winner Anacona who started tapping on the pedals. He's pushed Sky out of the way. Chris Froome is only interested in the riders immediately behind him, and those are the two riders he'll watch everywhere.
Slipping back there was the big man Roman Kreuziger. That's Alberto Contador bobbing out of the saddle, but this is always a very difficult moment to have a mechanical problem at the start of a climb and try and ride your way. Trying to ride your way back through the convoy of cars is very difficult. Up alongside of Vincenzo Nibali, he's got one teammate there, Tanel Kanget. What a strong boy he has been from Estonia.
The Union flag of the United Kingdom flies as the riders go past it there for Chris Froome now. He's going to have to find something special. He only needs to watch two riders now to win the Tour de France, Valverde and Quintana. I don't think it's possible now for Valverde to recover 5 minutes, but what about Quintana's 2 minutes and 30 odd seconds?
Well, to put it into perspective, the man just slipping backwards there on the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali, 129. Thomas Voeckler, his team manager, was saying on French radio last night that Thomas was in such a bad state yesterday, he even contemplated abandoning the Tour de France. And this is a guy who's ridden the Tour de France many, many times, and that just reflects how tough this last few days in the Alps have been.
Voeckler is not a quitter, that's for sure. Well, nobody going yet. The white jersey is expected to jump, but he hasn't moved yet. And this is the winner from last year, Vincenzo Nibali. As we're looking at Nibali, I think there he is. He started to go, and he's gone a long way from the summit. A reaction from Port. Froome is after Port.
Let's not forget, there's another problem. Matthias Frank has had a flat tyre, a back flat tyre being changed there by the mechanic, throws it in as quickly as possible. This guy is in 7th place overall, but it's all about Nairo Quintana. Richie Porte has gone across, but Froome could not follow him. The thing about Froome is he doesn't have that acceleration, but he slowly drags himself back into the race.
Once he gets his revs up to about 120, he comes across. But now, this is the move. Quintana has said he will attack him all the way to the finish. If at worst there's a consolation prize, it will be a stage win. But hey, he wants to win the Tour de France even now.
Well, he will fight all the way to the top of this climber. The man trying to defend his 4th place overall of Vincenzo Nibali at the moment. He may well be slipping down. And let's not forget, Alberto Contador lost a huge chunk of time yesterday.
Well, we've seen some incredible climbs on here, but normally by the top it's been one, at most 2 riders. At the moment we have a huge group going shoulder to shoulder here. Don't forget, we still have a leader up front, but the camera's rightly staying with the battle. And
let's not forget that the rider on the right-hand side there in the green jersey, Pierre Rolland, was the winner at the top of Alpe d'Huez back in 2011. Calm returns to the storm as Richie Porte sets the tempo on the front for his mate. Hejjedal.
He's gone from the second group on the road now. He's off in pursuit of Alexander Genier. And this is a good move by rider Hejjedal. It really is. The Canadian is going to give it his best shot here. There is a slight reaction from the field. It looks like it is Anacona there.
Well, from Vancouver Island, Phil, I would think they're shouting quite a lot for this man from Victoria. He is a strong rider, winner of the Giro d'Italia. Navadauskas, job done there. He's slipping back down through the main field. He just wants to survive. And it goes again, Quintana.
So, another move by him now. Any reaction again? They're trying to go for him, but this is a pure climber in action now. You can accelerate, recover, accelerate. How many hits can they take?
Well, talk about, as we did a little bit earlier on, Lucho Herrera, the magical climber out of Colombia. The first time that we realized how brilliant Colombian climbers could be. Well, Nairo Quintana goes right into exactly the same mold.
And this is a superb acceleration here. Now it's hurting the Sky team, but Wout Poels is trying to contain him.
Well, he is, but he needs to sit up as he looks over his shoulder. They've got the gap once more over Chris Froome, and locked onto the wheel of Chris Froome was Alejandro Valverde. Now you can see Villermoz, winner of the stage to the Mur de Bretagne, is trying to nurse along his young teammate there, Romain Bardet.
Valverde sits on the wheel of Chris Froome. He is 3rd in all. He's watched his young teammate put the attack in this time on the Col de Croix de Fer. It was the other way around. Wout Poels is trying to contain the move, and a little kick by Richie Porte is bringing Chris Froome back up to his side. This hill is so hard, and the camera really doesn't really show just how hard it is.
Unless you've actually ridden up this climb on a bike, you don't realise how horrendous it is. It never gives up. It is relentless. And once you even get to the little town partway up, the town of Oison, it still goes up. And what really smacks you in the face, Phil, is if you look up, you can see the chalets above and say, oh my goodness me, do I have to go up there?
He's back, and despite all of this movement, Nibali is also progressing, and he had the bad luck to puncture. Now, Wout Poels, he's turned out to be an incredible teammate here these last few days.
Froome is slowing off while his teammates are actually riding a little bit of a way up the road, and that's trying to set up the move for Alejandro Valverde. Let's not forget, there is also a battle for the stage victory. Hejjedal goes again, and he's only looking for 44 seconds. Pino will follow him, the rider in the red, white and blue, but he won't try and collaborate because it's his teammate Juniez who leads the race currently.
Winner Anacona, the other rider there, but he drops away. This is the rider up front, getting the applause first. And he'll now know from the team car that his teammate is coming up as well, as Ryder Hesjedal tries to make this a great day for Canada and for Cannondale Garmin. 35 seconds, it's all he is behind. We're still a long way to climb. This hill never gets easier.
Strong boy, a little chat going on, touching his ear there, trying to hear the instructions being relayed up from the team car as Wouter Poels, followed by Richie Porte and Chris Froome, but they're still hovering in his wheel, waiting to make the next move.
11 kilometres to go, one leader, and so far Chris Froome is handling the attacks. Now looking at this group here, Andrew Talansky and passing through there, hopefully number one trying to get up there. So unlucky, couldn't have been a worse time to puncture for Vincenzo Nibali. At the time I felt he was hoping to gain time on Valverde. Instead, he just wants to get back into the action here.
Wouter Poels and Richie Porte in first and second place there. They will ride to try and deaden any further attacks. But the problem with a guy like number 51, Nairo Quintana, Phil, is once the gradient starts to get steeper, he feels at home. He feels the ability to push, and he will go once again. We've got a couple of kilometres where it does get slightly easier. It's only 8% the gradient at this point, Phil, and once we get back to the 9.5%, watch out for the rider in the white jersey there going again. That, Phil, 28 times the Tour de France has finished here at Alpe d'Huez, and 22 times the man in the yellow jersey at the summit of the Alpe d'Huez has gone on to win the Tour. Thibaut Pinot, though, is trying to win himself the stage this afternoon, but I think he needs to play the teammate here and sit on Ryder Hesjedal for the moment and try and at least give the last chances to Alexander Juniez, although it's looking very, very close.
10 kilometres to go, and this man still leads. He led from 0 kilometre. He is now led for 100. Further down the slope, though, Hesjedal is trying to get rid there of Pinot, and Valverde's now going. Valverde is now also attacking the Chris Froome group.
Well, the team manager in the car behind us should say to the Skyride, don't chase him down, just let him go. He's so far behind. He's 5 minutes and 25 seconds. We don't need to chase this man. There's only one man to chase with 9.8 kilometres to go to the finish. It's Nairo Quintana. But is this another 1-2 move? Is Alejandro Valverde trying to get a little bit further up the road here to act as a launch pad for Nairo Quintana? Well, I think number 41 there, Phil, Alberto Contador, he's just happy to be in the move.
Well, Contador is sitting in only 5th place. He won the Tour of Italy. He hoped he would win the Tour de France. Nobody's done that the same year since 1998. Poor old Nibali here. He's crawling his way back, and well done, because he had a flat tyre when the battle began right at the base of Alpe d'Huez.
I cannot think of a worse place to have a flat tyre than in the first hectometres of the Alpe d'Huez. You lose a little bit of nervous energy, you lose the ability to have the warm attempt that you've had to come to the start of the climb, and psychologically it must have been very tough for Nibali. 25 seconds between Hesjedal and Pinot group and the leader, Juniez. Valverde, well, he's at 2:07. He's about 7 or 8 seconds ahead of the yellow jersey group, but they don't really need to chase him down.
And Pinot has climbed back behind Ryder Hesjedal here, while the lone leader is still in front, just 24 seconds ahead. You can just see him on the corner there. This is the man now. All he is doing here is consolidating his 3rd place overall in the Tour de France, because his gap overnight is 5:25 on Froome. But is he becoming the carrot to which Quintana can springboard? And he is, because there goes Quintana, and he now wants to join his teammate up front. If they get together, then is it possible to regain 2 minutes 38 seconds and win the Tour de France?
That is what he's looking for. That's the magical number that he needs. At 2:38, there was no major acceleration. Look at Wouter Poels there, the Dutch rider on the front. He keeps looking over his shoulder. He is trying to control his accelerations, Phil, so he doesn't damage Chris Froome. He knows he's got to look after Froome, and slowly but surely he's dragged himself back up to the wheel of Nairo Quintana, who I'm sure he's going to go again. Look at this.
Well, if he can kick, he will kick, but Wout Poels is still keeping Chris Froome, who has to bury himself a little bit and pick up his rev slowly. Contador in a little bit of distress here now, number 41.
He's not the only one, because the yellow jersey is also having a difficult time responding to these constant accelerations coming from Nairo Quintana, who is almost part way across the gap to Alejandro Valverde, who I've got to say is riding a brilliant race. Now Quintana goes again now. He's looking for the wheel of his teammate Valverde.
And he's definitely got Chris Froome in trouble here now. Quintana trying to reach Valverde. Valverde will slow for him and try and pace him. 2.5 minutes he needs. If he wins the stage, he gets a 10-second bonus off that time.
Well, Pinot has now seen the opportunity. His teammate is just there, ahead of the referees, a red car, and his left rider, Heyerdahl. Heyerdahl bows his head as if in surrender, but he will try and find his rhythm once again. Now, Valverde and Quintana join forces. This is the moment when Sky have got to say, look, let's not panic. We've raced for 3 weeks. There's only 1 day to go. There's only 9 kilometers of climbing left to go. Let's ride our little personal team time trial here to the summit of the climb and see if we can defend our position.
Teammates are joined here now. Genier is joined by his team captain Thibaut Pinot as they get up the road together. They are in tandem. They managed to get round rider Heyerdahl, who is not out of it. He's down there, but now we have an FDJ tandem at the front. It's a long time since we have seen a Tour de France attack each other like this from every direction. And now we've got a Colombian combined with a Spanish teammate to take on Chris Froome, who simply concentrates and hopes.
Well, he looks at the back wheel of the 2 riders in front of him, his own teammates, his mates. They've trained like this many months for the Tour de France at altitude, wherever it might have been anywhere in the world, and they know that they can ride at a steady pace for the next 8.5 kilometers. They're not going to try and match these 2 riders now. Heyerdahl, Phil, what amazing. He's actually out of the saddle here, fighting to come back up to the 2 Frenchmen, saying, you're not going to get rid of me like that. I know how important a stage victory is at the Alpe d'Huez.
Heyerdahl in his 7th Tour de France, his best finish in Paris, his 6th. That was in 2010. He's never won a stage, and now he's joined the 2 leaders, and he's going to try again. 3 of them clear.
Well, Genier is now the rider on the front. All he can do is sacrifice himself, keep the pressure on. He knows there's a massive battle going on further down the road, so he's got to keep the pressure on to hope that they can survive.
Just coming through on the inside of the bend there to the Norwegian flag, but the 2 riders in front are actually dropped riders being caught by the 2 Movistar riders, and he's going through them one by one now as they pick them off. Quintana is doing what he does best. He's going to try and gain 2 minutes and 38 seconds.
Well, you see how important it is to have a countryman in a breakaway like this. He's just caught Jose Serpa, who also hails from Colombia, and Serpa again turning up the pressure at the front here to help his compatriot. You know, what a story that would be if a Colombian could win the Tour de France this year. After this, of course, is the climb where a Colombian first won a stage of the Tour de France back in 1984, and that was the famous Lucho Herrera.
Alberto Contador, still one of the best climbers in the world, but on the defensive all of the time now as he hangs on the wheel there of Rafael Majka. This is Bauke Mollema here as number 1, remember, is Nibali. He was unlucky. He was almost back, and then the pressure came on, and he's out in no man's land now.
Well, now all of a sudden Genier's job done for the day. There's just 2 leaders now going clear, Thibaut Pinot and rider Heyerdahl.
Well, Genier carried the hopes of victory for 102 kilometres. Valverde has been hitched by the pure climber. Quintana now is free to fly. It's up to him how much time he can gain.
Well, Valverde has done a lot. Well, look at this. This is the man who was in the breakaway a little bit earlier on. We talked about this, Movistar putting a man in the breakaway, and what a man to put in the breakaway. A Colombian climber, one of his mates, winner Anacona. He won't think about winning on Alpe d'Huez today for himself, but he will do. You see the little nod there? Go on, lift the pace, lift the pace. Go as hard as you can, because this could be a great day for Colombia.
Well, this has been an incredible day for the Tour de France, the way they've hit this mountain today. These are the legs of Chris Froome. He's fought off everybody for 3 weeks. He knew it would come down to this day, and he knows he's got 7.5 kilometres, and he surely can hang on.
But Phil, bear in mind, he's got those 2 teammates up alongside him. Richie Porte riding a brilliant day, and Richie Porte is one of those guys who knows how hard he can push himself, especially when he knows what's at the end of today's stage. At the end of today's stage, when they get up to the summit of the Alpe d'Huez, I'm sure they'll be able to see the Eiffel Tower right there on the horizon. Well, 20 seconds is the gap between Nairo Quintana and Chris Froome, and they're slowly but surely catching many of the riders who were in that breakaway group a few moments ago. Ruben Plaza over to the right-hand side. Pierre Rolland, well, it's goodbye Vienna to these two guys as they continue this infernal pace being set by these great Colombian climbers. At the front of the race, though, it's Thibaut Pinot thinking about a victory, and he's right up there with Heyerdahl, who now is not looking as if he's in any difficulty at all.
This is Chris Froome here now, the team car behind him shouting instructions. And look at this, Heyerdahl is going. Note the distance to ride, 7.3 kilometres. He's put Thibaut Pinot under pressure.
Well, that is a very powerful move by rider Heyerdahl, the young climber from France in second position, number 21, Thibaut Pinot. He attacked the Canadian rider a couple of times here, but Heyerdahl, he is such a powerhouse, Phil. When he gets that big engine of his cranking along there, he never slows down, and so the man in second position is going to have to try and change the tempo a fraction just to get back up to the wheel of the Canadian.
But note that Quintana is only 65 seconds back of those. This is the spread. 28 seconds is the gap between the yellow jersey and Quintana, his arch rival. 28 seconds 30 at the moment, so he needs 2 more minutes, Quintana. It's possible with 7 kilometres of this climb to go.
It's an awful long way to go, though, and Chris Froome is still, I feel, Phil, riding within himself. These two riders are battling for supremacy to be the king of the Alpe d'Huez. It's such an iconic climb. You know, amazing to think this is the 29th time that the Tour de France has been to the Alpe d'Huez since the 1950s, when Fausto Coppi, I believe, Il Campionissimo, was the first rider ever to win up here.
Well, the American winner of the Tour de France in '86, Greg LeMond, came up this climb with Bernard Hinault, his teammate, hand in hand. Hinault won the stage, LeMond won the Tour de France for the USA. And we're looking now here at a real show of defiance, and still Sky have got 2 riders here to help their captain keep this man in white in touch.
28 seconds is now separating Quintana and the yellow jersey group of Chris Froome. Further back, some of the heroes of the Tour. This is Stefan Kruijswijk, a brilliant rider so far. There is Robert Hessink. The virtual yellow jersey standings at the moment, still 2 minutes and 8 seconds separating the yellow jersey and Nairo Quintana, but there's still 6.6 kilometres to go to the finish.
Poor old red-spotted Romain Bardet got mixed up in the battle royale for victory in the Tour de France. The crowd at least see a Frenchman in front here. We're not very far away from where the crowd were pretty violent apparently with the team cars coming up. Let's hope they're okay. Well, Quintana waiting.
Amazing, Phil, to see
again?
the Irish flag there and the guys shouting, Ale, 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 venga, 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 shouting to the Colombian riders at the front of the duo there of winner Anacona and Nairo Quintana. Thibaut is going clear through the Dutch corner.
Well, and it's a Canadian, brings them around, rider Heyerdahl. You can actually see the summit at this point if the camera swung up.
Yeah, this is a horrendous part of the climb, because if you just tilt up there, you can see the ski resort way up above you, and you know you've still got an awful long way to go.
That's Thibaut Pinot in front. Here comes the chase, or is it Geniez, sorry, who's being brought back.
Yeah, there's 58 seconds, though, separating the leader on the road to Quintana, and a minute 30 seconds back to the yellow jersey group. The leader here, number 21, Thibaut Pinot, was 3rd overall in the Tour de France last year. There is Geniez, job done for the day.
Well, here comes the Maillot Jaune through the corridor. And up front, with 35 seconds the gap now to the white jersey. 2 minutes 3 seconds required by Quintana.
Well, Walter Poels are going through Dutch corner there. He's on the front just ahead of Richie Porte. Chris Froome is in third position. Alejandro Valverde, the champion of Spain, are right on his way. There's not much space there at all, is there? I bet the tickets are quite expensive for that corner.
Pierre Rolland just ahead now. He's being picked up here. And in fact, Wout Poels just saying, move over. We need to bring the yellow jersey through. This is a moment of the Tour de France at its most decisive phase. Nibali, Bauke Mollema, Majka and Contador are next on the road here.
Well, Phil, a little while ago somebody told me the Tour de France is losing all of its popularity.
Oh, that's obvious.
I would hope they're watching these pictures.
Second man on the road, Thibaut Pinot. Just checking if anybody's coming back. Well, those two teammates, Wout Poels and Richie Porte, still making sure that Froome stays in. I think Froome at the end of the day is going to have to try and go alone.
Well, the gap between Quintana and Froome on the road is still hovering between the 30 seconds, 32 seconds. It's pretty much locked in there, but in a moment when they get away from this point, the crowd dissipates just a fraction and they'll be able to get to slightly bigger gear rolling over. Further down, Romain Bardet, the wearer of the King of the Mountains at the start of the day, the former wearer of the King of the Mountains in front of him, number 91, Purito Rodriguez. And sitting on the back there, it's great to see both of the Yates brothers in the images this afternoon. We've seen Adam, that was Simon Yates.
5 kilometers to go for Thibaut Pinot here.
Oh, he's pedalling with great urgency, with great fluidity. He doesn't look like a man who's starting to weaken here. And once you get to this point on the climb, you've always got the ski resort of Alpe d'Huez in your sights. He looks back there just to have a little bit of a check on him, and he will start to know that coming across the gap very, very quickly is the tandem of winner Anacona and Nairo Quintana, but they're still hovering at around about a minute. There's 29 seconds now between Quintana and the yellow jersey group of Chris Froome, who have picked up Pierre Rolland, number 121, the aggressive rider of yesterday's stage.
For the last kilometre or two now, there's been no gains by Quintana. He's got the gap, but he's not getting the time. With every pedal rev, Chris Froome is winning the Tour de France. 5 kilometres to the summit for Quintana, being led by his countryman and his teammate, winner Anacona.
They have gone through that point 54 seconds behind Thibaut Pinot. And let's not forget, Phil, Ryder Hagedal is still caught somewhere in this mass of people straggled all over the slopes of this climb.
Well, I've lost complete track of Hagedal, and so has the computer. But he's just come up now. Quintana is putting in another acceleration. No response from Anacona.
Look at the
He's
Colombian
done what he
flags.
could do. Lots of Colombian supporters on this mountain, the home of Lucho Herrera, back in 1984.
Well, he went round that corner, Phil, as if it was flat.
It never gets flat now. It's a magnificent acceleration. It's all or nothing. Well, there'll still be second place if it's a nothing for Quintana. He's nothing to lose. He could win the stage, but he's got to catch the rider in front. Hagedal will be next, and then Pinot.
35 seconds is the gap between the two riders, well, the two important riders in the race, the white jersey and the yellow jersey, and still Froome, that same old pedaling style that he has there as he goes through Colombian corner. I think we'll have to call that one back there now. He's now down to one remaining teammate, his mate who he went to train with in November and December of last year in Australia, Richie Porte.
Nibali never had a chance today. He's coming up with the riders who are coming back from that leading group as he continues to make it here. Last year's winner. This is the rider now. As a consolation, the stage win would be nice. There's still 2 riders ahead of him. The gap at the moment is about 50 seconds. It's moving open.
He's prizing it open slowly but surely, but it's a huge ask for Nairo Quintana this afternoon. He needs 2 minutes and 38 seconds to 28 if he was to win the stage and get the 10-second time bonus. But a little problem up the road is a Frenchman, but look at the gap. He's only 43 seconds behind Thibaut Pinot. And I still think that Ryder Hejjedal is caught in the middle.
It's always
dramatic.
We just can't find him.
It's always dramatic on Alpe d'Huez because there is so much goes on the slopes of this climb.
Who's chasing me? Well, it's a man in a white jersey right now. Thibaut Pinot is going to have to fight off one of the best climbers in the world on Alpe d'Huez, and here he comes.
Just getting information, Ryder Hejjedal is 23 seconds behind Thibaut Pinot, but at 42 seconds is Nairo Quintana. If we could have an open stretch of road, Phil, they would be able to see each other in this kilometre stretch. Quintana, though, still out of the saddle. He doesn't look as if he's having any trouble at all here.
There's no open stretch of road on Alpe d'Huez till the last crossing of the actual town, between 1 and 600 metres to go.
I was talking to one of the Colombian journalists just the other day about cycling in Colombia. He said, well, most people leave the village to become cyclists because they don't have the money. They're looking for a job to be able to earn money. This guy left his village in Colombia to go to school. Well, right now he's put all of his school studies behind him because he is the star of the show.
Port is also, he's completely recovered to guide Chris Froome here for as long as possible. Chris will be told all of the time in his ear, in his radio, by the team car what the gains are. He won't pack and crack until he has to.
It's 1 minute and 2 seconds now, looks like the difference between Quintana and Chris Froome on the road.
So don't forget, if he wins the day, he gets an extra 10 seconds bonus as well. It's going to be very, very close. This is a horrible moment for Chris Froome, and this finish can't come soon enough. 3.3 kilometres for Quintana. Well, you've got to take your hat off to a man. He's taken this Tour de France to the penultimate day, and he's never lost faith.
We'll talk about the kilometres ticking by right now. It's 1:06, 1:04 it is between Quintana and Chris Froome. This is tension. This is nail-biting stuff like I don't think we have ever seen at the Tour de France before. Quintana really needs to do something incredible on a day like this, Phil, because he's looking at 2:38.
Well, Chris Froome at the moment mustn't lose much more than 1.25 minutes right now of what's left on the roads of Alpe d'Huez. Quintana's at 36 seconds from picking up the riders in front of him. This is now 3 kilometres to go for a French leader on the road to Alpe d'Huez, Thibaut Pinot. .34 seconds Quintana, 1:01 to the Groupe Maillot Jaune is the gap between the two.
Let's not forget, behind Thibaut Pinot is still Ryder Hejjedal, but breathing down his neck is the man in the white jersey, the man who will win the Best Young Rider competition this year at Nairo Quintana. But he's not thinking about the white jersey, he is thinking about the yellow jersey. Here is winner Anacona coming backwards as well. He laid down the foundations for this brilliant attack by Nairo Quintana.
Froome has not enjoyed this climb. He just looks down like he has done for 3 weeks at his pedals and hopes when he looks up he sees the finish line or his adversaries. The gap there now is 58, 59 seconds or so. There's a 10-second win bonus if he gets up there, and he's going to close in. He's only 36 seconds behind the leader on the road now, Quintana.
Well, looking at the speeds, Phil, we're looking at very, very slow speeds, 11 miles an hour for Pinot.
The catch of Hejjedal. Hejjedal's going to see a white tornado go straight by him here on this climb towards the summit. 2.6 kilometres for the leader, this man. It would be an incredible victory as well for Thibaut Pinot. Injured in the first week of the Tour, limped through it, third last year in Paris. He's got more than some consolation prize today if he wins.
Well, there he is, winner Anacona now slipping away. He was the man really pretty much responsible for setting it up. 1:03 we're making the gap between the two. As we can see a little bit further up the road. Oh, winner Anacona nearly came, Quintana nearly came unstuck there.
Ajadol has tried to react, but I'm not sure he can hang on. No, he's cracked him. And now there's only one rider in front of Quintana.
Well, Phil, I am just thinking back. I know France would love to. Oh, look at Ryder Heyjerdahl. Talk about
incredible
courage.
Bike riding. That's incredible.
Digging so deep there, Phil. You know, this man is looking for every little bit of courage he can muster. But, oh, that Quintana just dances away once again.
We're heading up into the housing of Alpe d'Huez, but we're still 2.3 to go. Another acceleration. Ryder, I'm sure, can't take 3 of those kicks.
No, he can't. Number 51 here, Nairo Quintana, just 24 years of age. The winner we saw last year in the Giro d'Italia. He is looking to win the stage here at the Alpe d'Huez to follow in the wheel marks of Lucho Luis Herrera.
About 1:15 the gap over Froome now as he continues in the ascendancy. And he's still taking encouragement, but he's got a carrot here now in Thibaut Pinot. 25 seconds. He wants the consolation prize of the win. If he can't win the Tour de France, the stage on Alpe d'Huez will do.
Well, everybody who is a climber in this sport wants to win here on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez. The style now is starting to look a little bit more laboured for the first time, I'd have to say, really, for this man, Nairo Quintana, but he still gets out of the saddle. He's looking at the red car in front of him. He's looking at the banner over the road, trying to ascertain, can I do it? Can I get across to that gap? He's looking for 27 seconds. It doesn't seem like very much on a flat road, Phil. That's about 400 metres. But up the slopes of this climb with 2 kilometres to go, it may well be just a little bit too much.
2 kilometres to go. The clocks have started there now, and he's got 27 seconds to get across Alpe d'Huez itself and up to the finishing line and catch Thibaut Pinot.
The race radio is saying 1:15 seconds between Nairo Quintana and the yellow jersey group, but Chris Froome has lost half of the advantage that he had this morning over Nairo Quintana, but he's inside of the 2 kilometre to go right now.
The pressure goes on. 1:42. The group Maillot Jaune. Quintana has given it his best shot. He tried on the Col de Croix de Fer, and the boys of Sky and Froome anchored that one back, but now he had to go here. He went to the bottom, remember.
Phil, there is a change of gradient now as you get into the suburbs of Alpe d'Huez. It's a little bit flatter now. Froome and his teammate will be able to get into a much larger gear and hopefully pick up the pace a fraction. Thibaut Pinot, though, he's panicking, looking over his shoulder. He knows he's only got a half a minute advantage. He's got to get across the town square as quickly as possible. He so much wants to win this, having finished 3rd overall in the Tour de France last year. Mouth wide open, gasping for as much oxygen as you can get here at 1,800 metres in altitude.
Well, 2 kilometres, the gap is 1:17 between Quintana, and if he wins the race, he gets another 10 seconds. That would make it 1:27. Froome will win the Tour by 1:11, 1:11. He's going to have to fight all the way to the line, and this boy is not going to slow down.
He is not going to slow down. There is not too much gradient left, though, Phil, for him to take advantage of. There's only a couple more corners. There is the Flamme Rouge for the Frenchman, Pinot.
It's not going to be enough to win the Tour de France, but boy, he's gone up in everybody's estimation.
As he comes up to the line to get 2nd place, Phil, he will also get a 6-second time bonus. Now we start the clock. Chris Froome needs 2 minutes and 32 seconds, but Ryder Heyjerdahl is in 3rd place on the road. A great ride by the Canadian, I'd have to say, this afternoon. What power and what courage.
Smashed a bit yesterday. He could hardly speak at the finish. He's now going to cross the line in 3rd place on Alpe d'Huez. Great ride by Ryder Heyjerdahl. Now, still shadowed by the teammate of Quintana. Valverde will just sit behind Froome, maybe even try to outsprint him at the line. But Chris Froome now is in the final pedal strokes of the mountain, and tomorrow he will win the Tour de France.
He's giving it everything now. He's looking for that final left-hand bender. He's got full speed ahead here. He knows he's got time in hand, but he wants to make sure that it is comfortably finished when the clock stops around the final swing. You can see the finishing line in front of him. He knows he's got time in hand. He knows he's won the Tour de France with this finishing straight.
They'll need to be caught over the line. It's a nasty little finish this, but the clock is only saying 1:21. Chris Froome now is the champion of the Tour for the second time. Tomorrow he'll get his chance to show off his final leader's yellow jersey before he pulls on the winner's yellow jersey on the Champs-Élysées. But he's been hit by some of the best bike riders in the world. He had the answers, but what a great race it turned out to be. So Pinot, Quintana, Hejjedal, Valverde, Froome. I'm pretty sure Quintana is the king of the mountains tonight.
I still can't realise that I've won this, so it's something I've dreamed about for a long time. Everybody had crossed this run off on their list. In the last few meters, what went through your mind? It was just joy. The last 100 meters, I had no real idea how far behind. It's just the unknown. When I saw that the car was still behind me, I knew it was okay. It's become special for the French recently. In 2013, I think, is when the French won up here. It's super. What a strange Tour de France that you've had this year. What contrast, up and down. I've had a lot of bad luck. I never really gave up. I knew that up to tonight I had to fight to try and get myself a stage victory, and then finally I managed to win one. Is it better to win a stage or to finish in the top few overall? It's two different kinds of joy. It's not a silly question. It's great to win a stage like that, but to win at Alpe d'Huez is very, very special. To do that throughout a career is a great day. Alex Geniez did a great job.
He got the red number, by the way, Paul, not surprisingly.
I've got a super team, unbelievable atmosphere, and I never really gave up hope. No, well, he didn't. That was amazing, Phil. When you think of the ups and downs, when you think of him having to throw his bike away on the stage over the cobblestones, I think France, this is another part of the young French breed who are starting to come into the top of the sport, and they've been a long time waiting to find themselves a new Bernard Hinault. But it wasn't an easy win. He really took it hard to get across the gap, used his teammate for as long as possible, and well, quite emotional and exciting down there, I have to say.
Third stage victory for the French, so they've turned this tour around. But the first for the team FDJ and, of course, for Thibaut Pinot. He has won a stage in the Tour before, back in 2013, I think it was.
It was just in Switzerland, across the border. It was, in fact, downhill into the town of Portuis. But this one, I think, is something, as a climber, a man who's finished third overall in the Tour de France, this is one that he will certainly cherish for a long time to come. 18 seconds he had advantage over Nairo Quintana at the end, 41 seconds over Ryder Hejjedal. And Valverde just pipping Chris Froome home there for fifth place, Phil, could be very important when we go on the countback for the King of the Mountains competition.
Yeah. We're just waiting for the riders to give us that, but I've got a feeling that we might find Quintana has got it. This is Froome leading now, or should be setting to win the Tour tomorrow with a gap of 1 minute 12 seconds. 2 days ago, It was 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Quintana did his best.
Well, Phil, I think we always said and always expected that Nairo Quintana was going to improve in the last week of this race. He didn't ride the Critérium de Dauphiné in June. He had 9 days less competition than Chris Froome leading into this race. And I think that little bit of freshness might have paid in these last few days. I think Chris Froome can be very happy and lucky that he built up his advantage in the first part of the Tour.
The 21st and final stage of the Tour de France. The battle for yellow is over. The King of the Mountains has been determined. No one will challenge the white jersey, and the green jersey is on familiar shoulders. Images from Grenoble Airport this morning. Bernard Hinault, the 5-time winner, congratulating a man who by the end of today will be classified as a 2-time winner. And before the men got underway, we've seen La Course, the second edition of La Course by the Tour de France, the women's race, and it was an enthralling battle. Average speeds of more than 40 kilometres per hour, treacherous conditions, and multiple crashes. The Orica Green Edge team, they were aggressive, but so too was Mother Nature. The weather had its say. Anna van der Breggen went out the winner, an impressive win indeed, ahead of Jolien d'Or, the Belgian national champion, and the Dutchwoman Amy Pieters that rounded out the top 3. Lizzie Armistead was in 4th position. For van der Breggen, it rounds out what has been an impressive season. The winner of the women's Giro d'Italia, and all this on the back of the crash at the World Championships at the end of last year that saw her break her pelvis. It's nice and simple today. They start in the outskirts of Paris and then they finish in the heart of Paris. There's one Category 4 climb early, but that won't have any impact on the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Shorty stage, 109.5 kilometres. They then come into Paris for 10 laps through the course around the Champs-Élysées. This is down at the start village where they're still a few minutes away from rolling off. They'll then have the neutral zone for some 20 minutes. Then the flag will come in and then it'll probably stay neutral for a little longer. It's been one of the hottest tours in recent memory, yet it's one of the coldest finishes as well. What a contrast from the weather conditions we saw in Rodez, where it was up to 40 degrees. It's barely 14 degrees now. Bardet wears the King of the Mountains jersey because the race leader, well, he can't do so. Bardet actually sits in 3rd position there. The yellow is with Froome, who is the leader. Second place, Quintana wears white outright, so it's Bardet who wears the jersey today. No doubt he would have much preferred to have worn the jersey in his own right as opposed to having it on loan.
That will be the 1 kilometre to go at the end of the Tour de France. We are 10 circuits away from that as soon as we enter the Champs-Élysées. Ian Stannard riding there in front of Chris Froome. Wout Poels.
Well, I'm just hearing over race radio that Jan Barter at the back is looking for a spare wheel. There is the beautiful backdrop there of Sacré-Cœur, just perched right on the top of the Basilica of Sacré-Cœur, built in the siege of 1870. In fact, the interesting thing about the Sacré-Cœur, during the bombing of Paris, a number of bombs landed around the church and not one of them detonated on the church itself. Across the Place de la Concorde, and now they are into the finishing straight. Past the obelisk, which came from Luxor in Egypt, transported here by Napoleon Bonaparte after his great wars in Egypt. They're now onto the Champs-Élysées. When they come up to the line there, they will indicate 10 laps to go.
As they come up the home straight, it's about 200 metres to the line, and that is where the watches will stop because of the inclement weather. Chris Froome has won the Tour de France, and he's 70 kilometres more or less still to ride. 10 laps of the Champs-Élysées.
Big smile on his face there. Alongside him in the green jersey, Peter Sagan. Sagan, I think, Phil, who is going to run out the winner of the green jersey points competition, would dearly love to win this final stage. And you never know, because of the acrobatics that might be needed to win the stage this afternoon, it could give the slight advantage to the Slovakian national champion. That's Peter Sagan there, and that's what the surface looks like. It is still very, very damp on the surface. As you can see, it's a strange surface, the Champs-Élysées, and if you've never actually ridden up it on a bicycle, I can tell you from experience that it is actually slightly uphill. And if you try and ride a bicycle up this climb at around about 55 kilometers an hour, you will very quickly learn that it is almost a mountain after 3 weeks of racing. Stannard in the middle there. A couple of teams would certainly like to keep this very much under control as they start to meander up. They're coming up the Champs-Élysées over to the right-hand side. You can just about spot the top of the Grand Palais. The Grand Palais was built in 1897, again for the Universal Exhibition. And the Petit Palais constructed just on the opposite side to it. In fact, I've just noticed this year for the first time, just not too far away from the Grand Palais, there's a statue of the General Charles de Gaulle. Still plenty of raincoats on as we get a chance to see the dignitaries now starting to line up for this final stage of the Tour de France. There's Nicolas Roche, Richie Porte, Thomas de Gent in the dark black raincoat there, and obviously just noticing one or two riders now starting to get themselves stripped down, getting themselves rid of their rain jackets, ready for the very fast 67 kilometers that remain. Number 41 just sitting at the back there, Alberto Contador. He's tried on a number of occasions to get himself off the front. As Leopold Koenig sits towards the front of the main field in the yellow jersey, yellow band on his jersey. Deccan Kolb. You see all the sprinters now will start to be very attentive at the front end of this main field.
Well, we're heading up for our first journey around the back of the Arc de Triomphe. We started doing this for the 100th Tour celebrations, and they've kept it. We normally used to turn to save the traffic chaos in Paris before the Arc de Triomphe.
I have to say though, Phil, but on a day like this, it's probably a very sensible change of course, because if they had the old hairpin bend at the top of the Champs-Élysées that they used to have, it would have been extremely dangerous. At least this chance, they've got a little bit of a chance to change direction and go around the Arc de Triomphe and come back down the other side. People think it's a procession the final day. It really is full-on racing around here, and especially looking at these guys now. I know you were a little bit upset earlier on, but now the race is on, and it's very, very difficult just to stay in contact at these speeds on the Champs-Élysées, isn't it?
It is. It's a full-on race. It's really, really hard. People really like throw everything out they have left here on this last day. And don't forget, on the National Day of the France, 14th of June, they have a military parade on the Champs-Élysées. So they have rocket launchers and tanks running down the street. This is far from being a smooth ride.
Well, it's starting to mix up a little bit now as the riders are getting this together, as they go speeding over the very smooth cobblestones of the back of the Arc de Triomphe. Look at that, what an incredibly nice picture that is. Looks like the movement of a well-oiled watch. So just watching them consolidate as these riders, we've got Serpa here swinging through, Danilo Weiss is here as well, Grifko's getting back in the action. While we watch these 6 riders try to break clear, Paul, 2 Italians who crashed out, well, one crashed out and one had to leave because he was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and that is Ivan Basso. It's amazing, but both riders, the other one, by the way, was Daniel Bonatti, who broke a tibia. Both riders here today, out of hospital, both been successfully operated on. These athletes are unbelievable.
Yeah, but I think the story of Ivan Basso is the one that is really quite dramatic. If it hadn't been for the accident that he had and the pain that he could feel, he might not have been diagnosed as quickly as he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And that early diagnosis, Phil, I think is probably the most important thing, because with cancer was one of the things we've learned so much over the years. Early diagnosis, early testing is probably the most important thing, and I think we still wish Ivan Basso a great recovery, because it's still going to take him a little while to get himself back to the top. But having found that so early on, it's nice to know that he's here enjoying this final day on the Champs-Élysées.
And both will be celebrating with their teams tonight. Wow, that's a long line now. I think the pressure's on.
No, it certainly is. 44.5 kilometres to go. Well, that's about an hour, I would say, now before we get down to the finish line at the end. And you can just see, just sitting on the back there is Damien Gaudin of AG Tour. There's number 21 a little bit further forward. That's the winner of yesterday's stage. He's hurting today, but that's not a surprise after what he went through yesterday. Thibaut Pinot, the Frenchman, winner on the Alpe d'Huez yesterday. Right, back over the Place de la Concorde one more time. 3 more riders trying to force a little advantage. But you've got the red jerseys on the front of the main field now. Lotto Soudal, I think they've got the nod. Andre Greipel is good. He wants the victory this afternoon. But just watch, just hovering around there, not too far away, never very far away from them, is the green jersey. That is Peter Sagan. And if it comes down to being the best acrobatic rider around that final corner, I'd have to say that Peter Sagan will be that man. And it would be a fitting end to this year's Tour de France, I think, for Peter Sagan if he could get the victory. I think that would be a victory that would be extremely popular all around the world.
Well, he'd be delighted. I think it's 9 second places he's had in the last 2 tours, and he hasn't had a stage win. And he's won the green jersey, of course, which is for the sprinters. So it's like winning the Tour de France and not one of the daily stages. The sprinters like to win at least one stage as well as carry off the green sprinters jersey. Now Chris Froome through the traffic. There's the peloton. The maillot jaune is shortly back in the bunch.
Well, let's hope he gets up there before he hears the bell, because next time he comes onto the finishing line, he will hear the bell indicating 1 lap to go, 7 kilometres of racing left.
And because it's the Tour de France, the sun has come out as we approach the bell. Can you believe that?
Well, thank you very much. The sun is shining on the cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées, and right now it's still going back to Lotto Soudal. The gap 9 seconds. It is just hovering at 9 seconds. 9 seconds at these speeds is not very much more than about 150 metres. You're coming to the point now where these riders feel as if they could almost put their hands out onto the back of the breakaway group, but to close down those last few seconds is very, very difficult.
I predict that Dennis will go alone soon after the bell is sounded as he starts the last lap. He's got to give it his best shot, and wouldn't it be unbelievable if he topped and tailed the Tour de France? A win in Utrecht 3 weeks and 1 day ago, then a win in Paris.
I might just have caught a glimpse of the MTN rider, Serge Powell's number 218 at the back, trying to also stay in contact with the main field. What a ride he's done, Phil. He's going to finish the Tour de France in 13th place overall. Not bad for a wildcard selection.
It's terrific for MTN Quebec. They've had the tour they could not have hoped for. Everything has worked out for them. There's Daniel Tepler-Heimelot here. He wore the polka dot jersey, first African to do that for 4 days. Down the tunnel. I'm not sure we'll bring you those pictures, so we better get behind Joan Arc. Here we go, round Norwegian corner. Now they'll see the dress rehearsal this time. They'll see the kilometre kite. Next time it's for real. And there's an attack, and it's Van Bilsen this.
Well, this is a moment when they were just about to get caught, and this is ideal, Phil. You take this out of a professional cyclist handbook. When you're about to get caught, launch the counter move, but the response is coming from the Australian Rowan Dennis there in the red and black, and I'm sure he won't get caught out. He's got an unbelievable turn of speed. When he comes round, he will hear an incredible roar of the crowd. I wonder if he'll hear the bell, because it's going to be so loud when they come into this finishing straight onto the Champs-Élysées, and as if on cue, here are the Escadrille Nationale.
Patrouille
de France.
Straight down the Champs-Élysées. 1 lap to go in the Tour de France as they fly low over the Champs-Élysées. The Tour is home. Well, they first did that to celebrate 100 years of the addition to the Tour de France. What a magnificent sight. Paul, so much spot on total schedule. The bell, the jets, the end of the Tour de France in 7 kilometres.
Yes, but in 7 kilometres, we've got to wait about 7 minutes now, Phil, to figure out who is going to win this final stage as we look at the front end of the main field. Tinkoff Saxo, not a surprise now. I think all of a sudden, having worked the whole of this 3 weeks for Alberto Contador and his finish in the top 5, they're now looking to their man Peter Sagan. But on the last lap, they've still got to catch these two lads, Van Bilsen and Rowan Dennis. Rowan Dennis looks very, very concentrated there. You know, this is the guy who won the first stage. Wouldn't that be historic if he was winning the first and the last stages?
Two riders finishing their first Tours of France are right together at the top of the Champs-Élysées. 6 kilometres from the finish, and it's still Greipel's Lotto Soudal team trying to shut this race down for him.
Well, 9 seconds is the gap. You've got Lotto Soudal, Adam Hansen on the front, completing his 12th Grand Tour, but now all of a sudden Orica Green Edge are getting themselves organised as well. They're looking after their sprinter, Michael Matthews. That was a magical image a few moments ago, Phil, of the Patrouille de France going along the Champs-Élysées, and this man now is hoping that he can create the big surprise. He's got big firepower again. It's Astana trying to do it, but they cannot ruffle the feathers of Lotto Soudal, who is still all over the front of the main field. Everybody else is now starting to line up. Peter Sagan is there in his green jersey.
This is the long climb to the Arc de Triomphe for the last time. They haven't panicked. They've got the gap at 6 seconds. Everybody's going to fly at 60 kilometres an hour opposite the finishing line down the other side. Then they circumnavigate the Place de la Concorde. Then they sprint.
Rowan Dennis pounding on those pedals of his as he still goes up. I tell you, Phil, this climb can feel interminable, but for Chris Froome in a few moments' time, he can celebrate, he can enjoy. He's put away all of the 3 weeks of effort, and I'm sure that the team will enjoy it with him as they're at the back end of the main field, probably for the first time in this 3-week race.
Chris's wife is here. His brother flew in to watch him finish. He's won the Tour de France. We are 5 kilometres away. Well, the sun is at its strongest all day, and it's going to light up the finishing line of the Tour de France this year. The Sky Train that's guided Chris Froome to victory have all gathered behind him at the back of the race to celebrate his win. His time is taken, he's won the Tour. Now let the sprinters have a day they haven't had for 2 weeks.
This is what being a sprinter is all about now, holding position, being confident in the rider in front of you. There's a quick glimpse there of the Rhino on Chris Froome's bicycle. He's at the back end of the main field. Everybody at the front, though, is thinking about getting themselves a victory. You've got the great men of Sagan, Greipel, Christoph, Mark Cavendish, all wanting to get a victory. You can see Orica Green Edge in the white jerseys in the middle of the pack there, looking after Michael Matthews, who's hovering around waiting to see if he can find the opening here this afternoon.
Well, that's a good sign that Michael wants to go out with flying colours. His first Tour de France ruined in the opening days by a very bad crash, but refusal to go home. Chris Froome staying out of everything now. What is he thinking now? A second victory in the Tour de France. My team all around me. It's been a perfect 3 weeks.
Now's a moment when you've got to keep control at the front end of the main field, and it seems as if Lotto Soudal have lost control to Orica Green Edge, the Australian squad in the white jerseys there. Michael Matthews up towards the front. Over to the left-hand side, you've got Giant Alpecin in the black and white jerseys. They're looking after their man, John Degenkolb. They're all trying to get involved in this, but they've still got quite a long way to go. They've got the sweeping right-hand bend onto the Place de la Concorde, followed by the left-hand bend onto the Quai de Tuileries.
Luke Durbridge of Orica Green Edge has just had a puncture when he would have been needed up here, so they've lost a strong lead-out man there now as everybody tries to see the front of the peloton. Mark Cavendish there on the shoulder of the man in green, Peter Sagan. Will they go head-to-head in the sprint? They should.
Look at Sagan. Very rarely do you see him with his hands are so close to the brakes. He's just about touching the brakes. This is the sweeping bend. Everybody around there nice and safely now. Last time they will come this side around the Place de la Concorde, but you've got to hold position. Sagan now up into about 7th or 8th position. He wants to go around the final corner, not very much further down than 4th position. There is no organised lead-out train currently.
Well, they're all breathing in there as they make the sweep now, because they go into the darkness of the tunnel. They'll come out in the shadow of Joan of Arc, and then they'll turn left and see the kilometre to go. They've got to get the position on the next left turn here, and it's the white-blue of the team of Arnaud Démare, the French sprinter, being brought to the fore.
Yeah, Arnaud Démare will be looking for this, but look at this, all chaos all over the road now, and everybody, because there is no big lead out, feels that they've got a chance of creating the surprise, trying to jump out and surprise the sprinters at a moment like this.
You see Tiago Machado here from Portugal, who's trying to push his way to the front. Everybody's grabbing wheels here. There is no organised chain, because don't forget, Mark Cavendish lost his lead out man, who Mark Renshaw, who's out of the race.
But now's the moment when, if you've got any firepower left and you've got a sprinter, you've got to keep yourself organised. You've got to stop your sprinter getting swamped from behind, because if you touch the brakes now, you slip down into 10th or 15th place, your chance of a victory disappearing out of the window. As they go under the tunnel, who's going to come out in control?
Well, Greipel, Sagan, Cavendish are locked into each other's wheel in that order. It's around the Norwegian corner for the last time now.
It's Giant Alpecin, they've got control. John Degenkolb is a little bit further back, but his team will keep the pace nice and high to prevent him from getting complicated position going round that final corner. Rudy Rivoli for the last time. It's a very long straight lead out now, and they've got to keep position. Sagan is there in about 4th or 5th. There he is in the green with the green helmet. Looking behind him, you can see John Degenkolb is looking for the wheel of Peter Sagan.
This is Andre Greipel. He cannot believe it's his 10th historic stage win in the Tour de France.
Well, I did mention to you, Phil, a little bit earlier on that you had to wait to launch the sprint. Christophe started much too early. There is Froome.
Arm in arm with his team around him, Chris Froome wins the Tour de France.
To look at the power here.
It's the distance. It is such a difficult sprint. If you go out front when you make that right turn, 350 metres out, it's too far from the line. Difficult for the lead-out men to judge it, but he got it right.
He got it right. He knew what he had to do. Christophe started much too far out. We know Christophe is a powerful sprinter, but, you know, it's a long way. It's 350 metres, and if you start too early, you just find yourself fading down towards the end. Great win by Andre Greipel. I think that will make a lot of people quite happy. Started the Tour de France, and I have to say, he pretty much locked it all in down towards the end of the first week. But Greipel here proved that and the big lunge there, Brian Coquard lifting his wheel off the ground, just trying to get himself across, but he could not beat Andre Greipel. Edvald Boasson Hagen up there as well. He's in the middle for MTN Quebec. Over on the right hand side, Mark Cavendish. I think that face tells it all. He just did not have what it took this afternoon. Arnaud Démare inside of the top 10 as well. Peter Sagan finishing it all off in the green jersey. But Peter Sagan will win the green jersey points competition for the 4th year in succession, proving to be the most consistent rider throughout all of these tours the last 4 years. But Greipel, well, Alexander Kristoff started the sprint much too early, and Greipel felt, I mean, I can't imagine what amount of pain Andre Greipel was going through there, especially with his knee bandaged up the way it was. And great ride by Coquard. He really got close, and I think given a couple more years, we'll see Coquard a lot closer.
And I think it was Heimars Rebelde, the rider we saw, who crashed and looked as though he was injured. He's just gone through the finishing line, so I think all is well. Well, Chris Froome, the winner of the Tour de France. Sky dominated it, but at times they looked a little bit vulnerable and they were tested. And I think Chris Froome's won one of the best Tours de France in years, when all of the favourites took the finish line in the top 4 places of the race.
Yeah, that's amazing, Phil. And you throw in there Alejandro Valverde into 3rd place. You've got a mad... Well, I mean, if you look at the top 6 or 7 riders, Phil, all riders who finished in the top 10 in the Tour de France before, but of 4 of the riders in the top 5, they've all won Grand Tours. Froome, Quintana, Nibali and Alberto Contador. Pretty impressive.
Andre Greipel got his 14th win of the season, but he's won the Tour de France stage in Paris, and that's worth them all.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the one he really wanted. All of the sprinters wanting to win here. But you know what? it's good to see the smiles on the face of Team Sky here, and I'm sure there'll be a few Tusker lagers consumed this evening by Chris Froome's brother.
Froome thanking his friend there, Richie Porte. He tweeted overnight, my real heartfelt thanks to my friend and great teammate, Richie Porte. Even when Richie was tired, he still found legs to try and help him until he blew completely. There's the stage result, all same time, of course. Greipel, Cockart, Christoph. Boasson Hagen refining his legs as a sprinter today in 4th, Arnaud Démare 5th, Cavendish only 6th, he won't be happy with that. Sagan 7th, and he wins the green jersey competition with 420 points, so it's 11 points less than he won it with last year.
Ein paar Sieger auf dem Buckel.
Ja, das ist einmalig. Das ist
quite unbelievable.
das, wovon ich immer geträumt habe, seit ich Rad
one of the
fahre.
most amazing
Alle, die mich
stages
dabei
to win.
unterstützt haben, ein großes Dankeschön.
A
Meine
massive
Eltern,
big thank
meine
you to my
Familie,
teammates
Alle meine
my
Trainer,
family,
die ich hatte,
and my
der
trainers.
Saga, einfach alle, die mich auf diesem Weg
It's
unterstützt
been an
haben.
amazing week.
Danke.
Thank you.
Auch an meine Teamkollegen, das ist fantastisch.
Dankeschön, jetzt die Frage auf Englisch. What's the importance to win here in Paris? What's special here to win?
This is the most awesome place to win a bike race for a sprinter, and everybody who was involved in the way of my career, my mother, my parents, my own family, and my teammates, all my trainers who supported me. They are all part of this victory today, and I'm super proud of it.
Thank you.
Yes, and it's the 6th German victory of this Tour de France. Then you can reenact it now. Look at the speed. He's proved he's the fastest finisher this last 3 weeks.
Well, Coquard came up pretty quickly there on the inside, but Phil, I've told you so many times, this Champs-Élysées sprint is all about positioning, it's all about timing, it's also all about having massive big power, and that sprint, we've watched it over the years at races like the Santos Tour Down Under at the start of the season, and it's great to see that finally, to me, that is a crowning moment for Andre Greipel.
But the man who's won the Tour de France in just over 83 hours of pedalling through the Alps and the Pyrenees before that, Chris Froome wins for the 2nd time, adds that to 2013 now. Quintana second to Froome again for the 2nd time, but this time the gap only 1 minute 12 seconds, and Quintana has age on his side. Valverde gets his first podium place, and he really worked hard for that.
And I think, Phil, the fact of the matter is with Alejandro Valverde, he didn't really hold back. He did everything he could to try and get the victory for his teammate Nairo Quintana, and still he ran out in 3rd place overall. That is what is impressive about Valverde's performance, I think.